Okay. Good evening, everyone. I hereby call this open session regular meeting convened at 7 o'clock p.m. If you would all
Good evening, everyone. I hereby call this open.
Ooh, exciting. Please bear with us this evening. We are doing a live stream and a Zoom to bring some staff members in at the same time. So it's exciting every time at our board meetings. If you all could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let the record reflect that all 5 board members are present this evening. We'd like to welcome all of our guests out in TV land. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I need a motion to adopt the agenda with the following amendments. Immediately after the agenda is adopted, we will move into the recognition of the Glendora Education Foundation. Then something is a little different this evening where the superintendent's report relates to the reopening of schools. And we received 11 public comments specifically about that topic. So we thought that it was most relevant to hear those public comments at that time as we have the discussion on reopening schools, rather than having those public comments at the end of the evening when the discussion has already taken place. So we will have those 11 comments read to us before the superintendent's report so that everything is all together and makes sense that way. And finally, on consent item number 9, approve resolution number 6. It reads as number 5. It's actually a resolution number 6, so just that little typographical change. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with those amendments, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Borg.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Merkley. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We've adopted the agenda 5-0. Okay. With our newly adopted agenda, that moves us along to our recognition section of the evening, where I'm going to welcome up 2 of my favorite people in Glendora. I'll give them a minute to make their way up, and I'll introduce them.
Well, thank you, President Reuter. I am Melinda Dilwishis, the president of the Glendora Education Foundation Board, and I have Prithvi Patel with me. She is our executive director, and it is a pleasure to be here this evening on such great terms. We are very excited. This year has been obviously very different for all of us, and we thought we were going to have a big struggle raising funds, and we did, but luckily we were able to adapt. And our community has really stepped up this year. And with our Glendora Connects campaign, we raised almost $150,000. And now with Giving Tuesday and our generous match, we were able to raise another $120,000. So that means for this school year to date, we are close to about $250,000, which puts us ahead of where we normally are at this time of year. Normally, our biggest fundraiser is in the springtime. It's our Food for Thought event. Last year, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But we're really excited where this puts us today and where this is pushing us forward. We're really excited to see what the spring brings. I just wanted to share some of the exciting things that our principals had selected for Giving Tuesday. We do have some Chrome carts, lots of Chromebooks, some stuff called Brain Pop, schools TV, programming and software, STEM classroom materials, a Nearpod, just lots of really technology-rich items and things that are going to help these teachers really help their students learn virtually and even when they're back in the classroom. So we're really excited that these resources are going to be universal, whichever platform we're teaching and you guys are educating our students in. So we're really grateful to be presenting this check today. I think Priti has our nice oversized check, and this is going to be for $121,444,000. So we are very excited to present tonight on behalf of our entire board, which we could not do this without, and we definitely could not do this without our community and our business partners. It definitely takes a village, and we're happy to give back in any way that we can. So thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. And can we do a photo op?
We will definitely do a photo op, but
Okay.
I'd love to see if any of the board members, I know Dr. DeLeon will have something to say, I certainly have something to say. Do any other board members have any questions or comments that they would like to give at this time? Yeah.
Just quickly, we can't thank you enough. We know how hard it's been and a challenge that it's been, and we thank our community. So everyone out there that's listening, we so appreciate the donations that you've made, and we actually need it.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. It's our pleasure.
I thank you for listing some of the Giving Tuesday wish list items. People need to understand where the money is coming from or where the money is going to, that there is a need and that the principals worked with their staffs to figure out exactly what the need was by location. And then the community really came together to support all of the students and the needs that way. I'm going to be a little more specific. On the Glendora Connects campaign, it was $146,189. And on the Giving Tuesday campaign, as you said with the check, it's $121,444, which is actually a total of $267,633. So don't sell your donors
Okay.
or your board or anybody short, because as you mentioned, this is way ahead of where the foundation usually is at this time of year. And it's thanks to your board and the collaboration with you all, working with Dr. DeLeon and Dr. Kelson and everybody, all the administrators here, where you were flexible with your campaigns and tried to think outside the box from what you would have normally done. And you did it. And then not only that, our community supported it. It's a pandemic. People aren't sure exactly what is going to happen the next day, the next week, the next month. So for our community to rally around our students and our teachers in our school and donate $267,633 year to date is really exceptional. And I thank you, and we all thank you for making such an impactful contribution. These teachers and these principals wouldn't be asking for these things if they didn't really need them. So you're really helping meet the needs. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that you have done on behalf of this district and the students of this district. The Glendora Education Foundation is just the most phenomenally philanthropic and generous organization, and the fact that our students benefit from everything that you've done is just incredible to me. But I did want to mention how important this particular fundraising was, because what people don't realize is though as a district we're trying to make sure that every single child has a Chromebook, that when we do inventory, often some of the Chromebooks we have are outdated and or about to age out and are beginning to be in disrepair or need repair or actually can't be repaired. And so the fact that you were able to really survey the sites, find out what they needed, and help us with replacing a lot of those. I mean, we had a great deal of concern about, because there was such a back order of Chromebooks. We had so much concern about kids bringing in their Chromebooks that were broken and not working, and would we have enough to replace them? And this is just an extraordinary effort that will really, really help us with our replacement cycle for our Chromebooks, which when you're a district where every single student has to be in remote learning and using computers every single day, they wear out quickly. And so this is just huge for us, and I can't thank you. I just thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all of the students of Glendora Unified School District. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
We'll come take that picture now.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well, we'll have,
I know, do we need to social distance this?
we're having that fun and we'll just take a great big together.
Okay.
Speak for the Gazette, right?
That's right.
Yes. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, ladies.
much.
Thank you for coming in. Really appreciate it. Okay, moving right along, the report of action taken in closed session. There was no action taken in closed session this evening. And then we'll move on to the oath of office, and I'll turn it over to Dr. DeLeon.
All righty then. It is my great pleasure to swear in our newly re-elected trustees. I'm really, really happy for you and happy for this district and our board and everyone. Okay, so raise your right hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please stand. Do you guys go down there usually, or do you come?
We do usually.
We go down there. Why don't you go ahead? I don't know how you do it here, but do you want to go ahead and go down there?
Go ahead.
One at a time? Okay, there you go. You want me to go down? Okay. Yeah.
It's good enough.
Okay. I'll go down.
Go, read slowly.
Okay.
Say,
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Robin Merkley,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will take the obligation freely
That I will take the obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Trustee Robin Berkeley, everyone. Woo-hoo. All right. You ready to do this again? Mm-hmm. All right. Here you go. Raise your right hand. State your name. Oh, I'm sorry. State your name.
I, Elizabeth Reuter,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will take this obligation freely
That I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
And I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you very
Trustee
much.
Reuter. I am one lucky superintendent. I got a fabulous board.
Okay. Okey doke. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Robin.
Congratulations.
Now we are going to move on to our election of officers for the period of December 14th, 2020 to the organizational meeting in December 2021. The first officer that we elect is the president, and I will now call for nominations for president of the school board.
I nominate Sandra Borg.
There has been a first and second nomination for Zandra Borg as board president for 2021. All in favor, say yes. Aye. Any opposed? No? The nomination passes. Congratulations, Ms. Borg. On to you. Woo!
I'm gonna finish them out.
It's yours now.
Okay, on to, let me put my glasses on. Vice President, do we have a nomination for Vice President?
I nominate Robin Merkley. Second.
Robin Merkley has been nominated and seconded by Dr. Fernando. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Robin.
Woohoo!
Please. Please do.
And now we're going to move on to clerk. I need a motion to nominate someone to be the clerk for the next year.
I nominate Rochelle Fernando.
Second.
It has been nominated by Corey Ellenson and seconded by Robin Merkley for Rukshan Fernando to be the clerk. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, Dr. Fernando.
And I'm sure that you'll be happy to have Mrs. Merkley continue to read the minutes for you.
Very well.
I can see this is not going to work. Steaming up the glasses. Student board members report. I think I probably need the gavel.
If you want it after I touched it, you may have it.
You like it? You want to like it?
Our student board members report will be read tonight by Mrs. Oh, there you are, Mrs. Wells. I wasn't sure who was standing up. Thank you.
Thank you. I have, let's start with the 12-14 Student Representative Board Report for LaFetra. They're planning for TK to return. Our team has been busy collaborating around logistics and specifics for bringing students back in the hybrid model in grades TK through 2 in early January 2021. Teachers have started setting up classrooms, removing extraneous furniture, and making appointments to troubleshoot technology with GUSD IT. While many teachers are feeling excited about working with students face-to-face, there are concerns about maintaining health and safety and managing an effective instructional program in the hybrid model. Students on campus. It has been invigorating to see students on campus this week. Mrs. Hernandez's class returned to in-person learning on Monday, and students were excited to see one another and be back in their classroom and school play areas. I am happy to report that all students wore their masks all day and were respectful of social distancing and hygienic requirements. PTA Fun, our amazing PTA, is sponsoring a drive-through Christmas holiday craft event on Wednesday, December 16th. Families are invited to drive through the parking lot to collect a DIY holiday craft to assemble at home as a family. This is one way to spread holiday cheer and remind our Lions that we are thinking of them and miss seeing their sweet, smiling faces on campus. Seller School. Seller students and families participated in a holiday food drive the week of November 9th through the 13th. 1,010 items were donated. It was a contest between boys and girls, and the boys won. The donated food was given to Shepherd's Pantry for distribution. Virtual parent-teacher conferences took place the week of November 16th through the 20th. Over the Thanksgiving break, many students and staff participated in the Turkey Trot Challenge with options of a 1 mile or 5K race. A Festival of Lights toy donation has been set up by our PTA for our families to drive through and drop off an unwrapped gift. It included a tunnel of lights, inflatables, music, and more. This event was on December 11th and 12th. Goddard ASB is continuing to host virtual games once a week at lunchtime. They also hosted a virtual cookie decorating and ornament making event. October Students of the Month were treated to a visit by Dr. Prince and Mr. Zernerkow. They were awarded a certificate and a plaque. Over 30 students were recognized for their efforts in a recognition drive-through. They were awarded certificates and a goodie bag donated by PTA. Teachers and staff were present to cheer as they drove through. Then finally, we have the GHS Student Board Report. Finals week. This week is finals week at GHS. Our students have worked hard to prepare for their end of the semester projects and assessments. To help prepare our students for finals, we hosted a virtual COCO and CRAM event. Teachers and student tutors met via Zoom with students to help support students in their preparation for finals in various subjects. Snack Attack is something that ASB does to celebrate our students and staff. We pick one class a month to receive the Snack Attack. Students then drive through Circle Drive to see their teacher and to receive the snack lunch. Most recently, Mrs. Aguirre's first period class was selected and received a Raising Cane's lunch, which was generously donated free of cost by the restaurant to our school. An athletics update is on December 1st. CIF State put out a press release that noted they are awaiting guidance from the State Department of Health that would allow for schools to return to full practice and competition. CIF stated that full practice and competition start dates are officially on hold until updated guidance is issued. The current LA County Department of Health Youth Sports Guidelines allows for us to safely continue to safely continue. Okay. Zoom for the holidays. Zoom shout out to Mr. Stevens drama students for their hard work preparing for their upcoming production, Zoom for the Holidays. Ticket information can be found using the flyers that have been shared with the community. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Mrs. We look forward to having Nadia and Chloe back as soon as we can open this up back again. But thank you, Mrs. Wells, for reading that. Superintendent's report, Dr. De Leon.
Trustee Borg, if you don't mind, we could hear the public comments that are
Oh,
related
you're
to
right. I'm sorry.
the reopening.
I didn't have that on my
At
list.
this time,
So, Miss, yes, okay.
I'll go ahead and be reading those.
Thank you, Mrs. Campos.
Did you wipe your microphone down?
For you.
That with a smile.
I'm really good at this.
You take care of everyone else, now we'll
you
take
go.
care of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first public comment, this is from Ivy Hung. She is a sophomore student at GHS. Good evening, Superintendent Dr. De Leon and esteemed members of the school board. My name is Ivy Hung and I'm a sophomore at GHS who wishes to bring your attention to my and many other students' concern regarding the reopening of schools. My main disquiet is the undoubted threat to our health once we return to the classroom. The most likely time to reopen schools is after the holidays when there will be a predestined rise in cases due to travel to see relatives. To open schools during such a time is illogical and frankly irresponsible. Face these facts with the probability that not all students will abide by social distancing rules is a combination of chaos. With the foreseeable outcome in mind, the school will presumably close as soon as it opens, which will not only be an inconvenience for students and teachers, but will also be a waste of the money used to reopen the school. Although I am aware of the benefits of returning to the classroom, such as teachers observing and guiding students better, I firmly believe that our education should not come above our health. If students are in poor health, mental or physical, it obstructs our ability to learn, and some long-lasting effects of COVID may permanently damage our ability to learn. Lastly, I am aware that Dr. De Leon and the members have no authority over the decision to reopen schools, but I hope the board and everyone here listens to my message nonetheless. That's the first. And this next comment is from Art Ludwig. Dear members of the GUSD Board of Education, I understand you will be getting input Monday night on the GUSD response to COVID-19 epidemic. I offer my sincere appreciation for your continued effort to offer educational opportunity during this invisible war on our community. As some of you may know, my wife and I have been members of this community for all of our 55 years of marriage. We have put 3 children through the GUSD schools and now have 3 grandchildren as students. Through our entire life in this community, we have been supporters of the education program as parents, donors, and volunteers. I know education is important, but we have an invisible enemy circling our educational program today. The rampant COVID-19 pandemic does not have a parallel since the Great Flu pandemic of 1918. Its impact is monumental. Its reach is frightening. I serve on the Eminent Health Board of Directors. As such, I have visibility of the 3 hospitals in our area, Foothill Presbyterian, Intercommunity, and Queen of the Valley. These hospitals are experiencing unprecedented demand for COVID-19 hospitalization. They are close to capacity with expectations of rising demand. As the saying goes, there is no room at the inn. Although still safe and active for normal hospitalization needs, the specialty areas for COVID-19 will soon be in overflow mode. Given this community spread of the pandemic, I can understand the difficulty in meeting the schooling needs of the young while at the same time protecting the teachers and the students from the disease itself. I know the GUSD has gone to great lengths to meet its mandate to educate the children of Glendora. Some programs have been direct, but most has been indirect through Zoom and other virtual offerings. Sadly, the direct contact of student to student and student to teacher has been minimal. Sports and other extracurricular offerings have been sparsely available for obvious reasons. I do appreciate the displeasure and anger created by this approach to education. Although this educational constraint has been painful to most and unacceptable to many, I think the Board of Education and the administrators have done a good job of managing the impossible. The safety of the students must be a first priority of the schools. No one deserves to get infected directly or indirectly as a result of school attendance and land in one of the few beds remaining at Eminent Health. I am no expert on how to deal with the variables involved in this struggle, but I do know that the last thing I want is to put more community members in our hospital. With all due respect to the many who wish the schools to do more, I offer my thanks to you on the Board of Education and your administrators for your creative efforts to stay safe and educate at the same time. This war is far from over. Vaccinations are coming, but likely will not be effective until the next school year. In the meantime, we need to do all we can to halt the spread of this vicious virus. A good education cannot be offered until COVID-19 is in the rear view mirror. Schools must not be an agent for spread of the disease. This one comes from Priti Patel. Thank you. I want to start off with those 2 words because I am sure you all do not hear that enough. My daughter is in 1st grade, and although distance learning is not ideal, I can't be more proud of the hard work of not only my daughter, but her 1st grade teacher, Miss Alusi. Miss Alusi is as present as one can be in a virtual environment with my daughter. She is always quick to respond to questions the students and parents may have. She is engaging with all her students and will go above and beyond to make sure they have what they need to be successful, including porch drop-offs of supplies. I hope the kids can go back to school soon, but I do realize it is not the decision of the teachers, administrators, or the Board of Education. I want to make sure our students and teachers not only are safe, but feel safe before returning to in-person school. If this means my daughter has to learn virtually for a few more months, then that is what it is. I just wanted to send my thoughts because there is so much negativity in our world, and I think our teachers, administrators need to hear some positive, well-deserved feedback. Okay, this is from Carrie Shepard. Dear board members, I am a strong believer of having control over one's attitude. Some even go so far as to say that attitude is everything. There is another saying that we adhere to in our family. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. The remote learning situation that the state of California is going through is certainly circumstantial. As much as we as parents, administrators, educators, and staff would like to safely reopen the schools right now, we just can't until the Los Angeles Department of Education allows us to do so. The teaching style of my son's teacher is worth mentioning in light of this. Wendy Farinato teaches 5th grade at Collin Elementary School. She is a fine example, like many of the educators in our district who have had to rise to the occasion and provide the rigor necessary to engage students in remote learning. Mrs. Farinato has a great attitude. She makes you want to show up on time. She is patient when technology problems arise. She is resourceful and uses her students to help each other solve problems on the different learning platforms. She spends additional money to enhance online learning. She teaches curriculum in creative ways so that my son will share Flipgrids or art lessons with me that he has made. She has been a source of encouragement and support. She has made all the difference by the attitude that she has chosen to portray in light of this COVID learning climate. She has turned something that my son feared into something that he has accepted and looks forward to each day. Thank you. This is from Kiran Dillon. I am writing to you as a concerned parent of a child who attends elementary school in Glendora. I am writing to express my concern about the school district's decision to move forward with opening elementary schools on January 4th and 11th. This is an unprecedented and trying time for all of us. I understand that it is a hardship for many families, to keep children home from school. It is very difficult for parents to balance their own jobs and work schedules with their children's Zoom classes. With 2 young children at home, my family is experiencing the same struggles as everyone else. However, all the sacrifices we have made over the past 4 months by finding a way to make it work with kids being home from school will have been for naught if schools are prematurely opened on January 4th and 11th. As you know, we are currently experiencing the worst spike in cases since the pandemic started. Hospitals are overrun. The majority of the state, including Southern California, is under a state mandated stay-at-home order. We were just notified that there have been confirmed COVID cases at Glendora High School, and the campus will be closed for a week. This is simply the worst time to be opening schools, especially given that COVID cases will undoubtedly continue to rise following Christmas and New Year's Day. Ultimately, if we could make Zoom classes work for 4 months, what's a few more weeks? This is not the time to gamble with the health of our children. I truly hope that the school board will vote to postpone the opening of schools until COVID numbers are down, and that the more vocal minority who is pushing for schools to reopen, and in some instances even suggesting that masks not be required, does not sway you into making a decision that will put our entire community, including our children and elderly citizens, in danger. Thank you. Okay, this is from Elisa Economou. Not sure if I said that right. Dear Superintendent De Leon and members of the Glendora School Board, my name is Elisa Economou. I am a Glendora resident and parent of 3 children that attend schools here in Glendora Unified School District. I wanted to provide formal thanks to Dr. De Leon and the members of the school board for using science, reason, and logic when planning for our children's return to in-person instruction. You have chosen to go the route of safety, endorsing the opinions of experts in health and science over those with little to no expertise in the field. Having our kids home on distance learning isn't easy for anyone, and provided viable options, I don't think this is what any of us would choose. The benefits of children being in the classroom with their peers and teachers are immeasurable. However, as much as I want my children back in school, I know it is of paramount importance that we remain thoughtful and deliberate in the path forward. Over the last few months, our community and these meetings have been beset by the demands of a very loud contingent of our community demanding schools to be open immediately. Those demands unfortunately refuse to take into account the very real dangers presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, including the safety of not only their own children, but our children, teachers, and adults in this community. While their frustration is completely understandable, their vitriol has become unacceptable, and their demand for action must be pointed out for what it is: childish, short-sighted, and irresponsible. Through multiple discussions with parents, I have discovered that communities surrounding Glendora have done almost nothing in terms of effort to reopen or communicate to their citizens regarding plans to reopen schools. Dr. De Leon and the Glendora Unified School Board have, in contrast, provided constant information and communications, along with detailed plans to reopen, in admirable service of those who elected them. You should be celebrated for your efforts during an unprecedented pandemic, not forced to sit through public comments strewn with unsupported and undeserved insults and accusations. I am concerned to be a part of a community that would do so, and apologize for the large portions of citizens who do not feel that way. Thank you. This is from Tammy Maurice. When we chose the hybrid model for our children before school started, we wanted to send our students back to the classroom. I was very concerned how my kindergartner would be able to sit in front of a computer for hours. However, over the last 2 months, both my kids are doing well and have adapted as children do. My third grader has an amazing teacher and has gained many valuable skills she would not have gotten without these challenging times. Computer literacy and independence have replaced social anxiety and needless busy work. She has much more time for reading, art, and creativity. My kindergartner has adapted well. He doesn't know any different. He loves his teacher, has a routine, and finally has it down. After 5 months of school, he is very attached to his teacher and classmates, even with this virtual classroom environment. It was with great thought that we decided he cannot return to the classroom at this time. It just does not make sense to send kids back to school during the current surge of COVID cases in the county, especially after the holidays. We did not make this decision lightly and have every intention of sending him back to school when it is safe. However, we cannot risk him in a classroom with other families who feel this pandemic is a hoax. COVID is just the flu. Do not wear masks or social distance. Have indoor birthday parties or that children don't get it or spread it. I have seen and heard all of these from parents in Glendora. Therefore, even with the school doing what they can to keep my child safe, we cannot safely send a child there with this mindset of parents in our community at this time. I write to you today to bring to your attention how appalled we are that he is now being punished by taking his teacher away and putting him in a class with strangers. Really? We are the ones making responsible decisions regarding the pandemic, yet are told to send our kids back or else he will suffer consequences. This is against his social and emotional well-being that GUSD has been pushing and doing more harm, especially right now. There must be a way to keep him in virtual learning with his class and teacher. Please do better. This is from Lydia Webb. Dear board members, recently I've noticed a lack of caution amongst students in our district in terms of social distancing and proper safety measures. Many GHS students who I follow on social media have posted photos of large gatherings in which none of the participants are wearing masks or social distancing. I understand that I nor the district can control their behavior, and I understand that there's no way to know whether or not these students wore masks before or after the photos were taken, but as a student, this aloof behavior deeply concerns me. It makes me wonder if these students will apply the same lack of caution to in-person or hybrid learning, should the event ever arise. Overall, I feel very apprehensive about engaging in a learning environment where I'm uncertain as to whether or not my peers will take the same precautions that I will. In addition, I strongly believe that we must wait until a vaccine is available and has been distributed to the student faculty population before we return to in-person schooling, with the exception of IEP students, younger students, and others that the district determines need additional accommodation. The only way to ensure students and their families are fully protected is to take all precautions necessary. A vaccine is one of these precautions. Even if my concerns and predictions mentioned in the paragraph above come true, a vaccine will ensure safety for both students and faculty and cushion the blow of an outbreak occurs in our district. I speak from the perspective of a high school student with 2 full-time essential worker parents, one of whom teaches in your district. I know my perspective is not applicable to every GUSD student, but I'm sure my desire to protect my family and my friends is universal. Most of us know someone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. Some of us have caught COVID-19, and too many of us have known someone who has died from COVID-19. We can help prevent GUSD faculty and students from becoming another one of these statistics, and it's through the continuation of our distance learning program. Thank you for your time. Okay. This is from Mike Roth. Dear Glendora School District, last night I went to a school board meeting for the first time with hopes to share my thoughts on reopening the schools. I didn't get a chance to speak because the meeting was hijacked with an orchestrated plan to vent personal grievances and bolster them with ruckus and jeers. It was uncomfortable. On my way out, I noticed a few police officers had arrived. I can only imagine why they were there. Passions are high right now, but I know without a doubt our loving community is so much better than that. Anyway, the following are the thoughts I was hoping to share. According to the CDC, 94% of all COVID deaths weren't caused by COVID. Rather, they were caused by COVID complications. This means that only 6% actually died from COVID. This would be a sigh of relief if only it were true, but it isn't true. It has been debunked by the CDC, multiple fact-checking sites, and even removed from social media platforms for being false. It's like saying someone shot in the liver didn't die from a gunshot wound, rather they died from liver complications. The real complication here is that false information like this gives us a false sense of security and comfort. I am not a scientist, nor am I a fortune teller who can read the tea leaves of this city's future should we proceed to reopen our schools. But here's what we do know. COVID cases will go up. To quote the CDC website, children can spread the disease even if they don't have symptoms. We also know that children can die from COVID. This past week in the news, we learned that Tegan White died from COVID within 24 hours of contracting it. She had no pre-existing conditions. She was 5 years old. She is not alone. This past week, the CDC reported record COVID numbers across the board. Each day this past week, our nation has had over 100,000 COVID cases and over 1,000 COVID deaths. So far this year, the U.S. has had 236,000 COVID deaths. By contrast, each year the flu averages somewhere between 12 and 64,000 deaths, and those flu deaths happened without any social distancing, masks, or shutdowns. This past week, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that multiple Pittsburgh area schools are just some of the many schools nationwide that are moving back to remote learning after failed openings due to COVID spikes. This past week, ESPN reported college football teams like the University of Virginia canceled their games because of COVID. This past week, BBC reported Britain is going back under lockdown because of COVID. This past week, we've heard more stories of people with what's called long COVID. These are people who were perfectly healthy prior to contracting COVID, but now months and months later, they are still too weak to perform simple tasks like getting out of bed without losing their breath. And this past week in our very own state, Northern California implemented new restrictions and issued a warning of widespread infections. It's safe to say COVID is surging again. We still have much to learn about this disease, but we do know that it spreads rapidly and it can kill. We have little defense against it. We can wear masks, we can social distance, we can quarantine, but we can't pretend that it's less dangerous than it is. I ask this community to ask themselves, what are we really gaining by reopening the schools 2 days a week? For some, the answer might be as simple as we need a break. For others, it might be having some sense of normalcy again. And man, I totally get it. My wife and I have 3 grade schoolers and we are exhausted. We are sick and tired of COVID and all of its disruption. We pray every day for COVID to go away. But is remote learning really so difficult that we are willing to begin 2021 sick with a largely unknown and deadly virus? Or forbid celebrating Easter or Passover without Aunt Margaret, without Dad, without one of our teachers? There are no do-overs once Grandpa George is gone. With COVID, we aren't playing Wheel of Fortune, we are playing Russian roulette. At least with remote learning, we won't have to worry. Is today the day my kid brings COVID into the house? I love this community and the people in it. I think the Glendora teachers do a wonderful job, and I continue doing a great job fielding all the challenges associated with remote learning. In terms of COVID, I know without a doubt some of them are at high risk. If someone in this community dies because we rushed to reopen schools, what will we say to the surviving family? So sorry for your loss, but man, it sure was good to get TK through 2nd grade back on campus. Are we really saying that the sacrifice of remote learning outweighs the sacrifice of a possible death in someone's family or your family? And that was timed, so I'm going to stop that there at 3 minutes. Okay, this is from Julia Cushman. Okay. I am writing this letter to you to voice my thoughts on the likely postponement of the TK2 waiver return in January. I believe that we must stay the course on starting the slow return of students to a hybrid plan. It isn't perfect, and I know there are lots of concerns, but the truth is that students and teachers need to begin the process of in-person instruction. Honest teachers have shared with me how difficult it is to teach students online, especially our youngest students. Our TK-K students are getting very minimal instructional time. Teachers honestly can hardly measure learning since it is so difficult to assess these little people on a screen with microphone issues, lack of attention, and all the other distractions. It is essential that these children begin their education in person. I am very aware of the concerns teachers and parents have about safety, but I believe that the data is very solid about schools being safe. The district has purchased the necessary items to ensure that we are ready. The CDC has stated that the only time they supported school closures was last spring when little was known about COVID and its transmission. Their most recent statement is that not only should schools be open for students, but that students are actually safer at school than at home. The APA has been advocating for school reopening since last summer, stating that the loss of education will result in shorter lives and severe learning issues for children. The World Health Organization has begged the world to stop reacting to COVID with lockdowns due to the doubling of the number of people who will go hungry this year. On top of that, 82 million children did not receive their vaccines this year, which will result in new outbreaks of childhood diseases that have been under control in the last few years. Dr. DeLeon mentioned in our Stanton virtual cafe with her that many teachers were experiencing anxiety about the challenges of hybrid teaching and wanted more time to prepare and get training. I think no amount of time will bring that comfort. Many things in life are learned by doing them. Teachers had the same fears about distance learning last spring and summer, yet they learned to do it when they had to. Teachers have the resources they need, and I think it is simply another excuse to say they need more time to prepare. When Dr. DeLeon was asked by our staff why she chose to come to GUSD, her response was that she was very interested in serving our growing, lower socioeconomic population. I too am very passionate about the most marginalized students. I am at Stanton, so I know from personal experience about the hardships that many of our families have. One kindergarten teacher at my school has a student that lives in a garage with her entire family. When I interact with our students during Chromebook distribution or curbside library book checkout, they ask me about when we can return to school. They are desperate to be back. I have noticed over the years that many of our kids dread summer vacation because they love school and it is their safe place. We must do what is right for our most marginalized students. They are not safer at home. They need to be back in school. I do want to thank Dr. DeLeon and the board for bringing back our special education students. It has been wonderful to see them back at school. As a mother of a person with Down syndrome, I know how hard the lockdown has been for people with special needs and their families. Please don't shut down the in-person special education classes. These families need the schools to provide services for their children. As educators and child advocates, we need to allow students to come back to school for their mental wellness, physical wellness, and their educational wellness. President Trump designated teachers as essential workers, and I believe they are because school is essential. This means that they are needed to work during this pandemic to ensure the well-being of the next generation. We have the ability to bring teachers and students back in small cohorts for short periods of time. Teachers can even teach outdoors if they feel more comfortable. At Stanton, we have wonderful covered hallways that can serve as outdoor classrooms. We are fortunate to have the weather to allow for outdoor instruction for those who feel safer that way. Other than New Mexico, no other state in America has chosen to keep schools closed. It is time that we cautiously move forward and reopen schools. Okay, this is the last of this section. This is from Laura Shanilia. I am pleading for the board and superintendent to fight for our children to return to in-person school immediately. We have been told since March to listen to the science, listen to the data, listen to the experts, listen to Dr. Fauci. We've been doing that and in still doing that, we need to open all schools now. The science and data show that schools are not responsible for spreading of COVID-19. The experts all say that schools should be open. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Health Organization, the CDC, and Dr. Anthony Fauci himself all say that kids need to be in school. It is simply preposterous that anything is open and schools are not. The facts show that the risk of not opening schools is greater than the risk of COVID-19 infections at school. The mental health damage being done to our youth is something the likes of which we have never seen. It cannot be discounted as it has been for the past 9 months. We must do our best to protect ourselves from the virus, and we must do our best to protect our mental health. It should not be one or the other. The depression and suicidal thoughts and actions cannot be ignored any longer. Our children are being given a huge disservice, and that is inexcusable. I understand that some are fearful of a return to in-person school, and those people have been and are being listened to. I need you to understand that I am fearful of not returning to in-person school. My fears are just as valid and should be listened to just as intently. Schools are safely opening in other countries, other states, other counties, and other cities. In New York City, they are beginning to reopen tomorrow at the same time as their positive COVID cases increase, just like they are here. In-person school is essential and can and should be implemented promptly for all ages. My high school senior has already lost almost half of his last year of high school. There is no next year for him. There is no reason why he cannot be sitting in a desk on campus to attend school. The fact that we parents have to fight for our children to be in school is a concept that escapes my comprehension. Yes, there is a virus. Yes, there is presently a surge in cases. Yes, school should be in person in spite of all this. It can be done safely. It has been done safely all over the world. It needs to be done here in Glendora. Thank you for doing all you can to make this happen. That's the last one.
Thank you, Mrs. Compost. You deserve a drink.
Yes.
Bottle of water.
Big bottle of water.
I'm sure the community appreciates you reading all of their comments, as we do. And now we move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Dr. De Leon?
Thank you very much, Trustee Boer, trustees, members of the community, and our wonderful GUSD staff that are here with us tonight. So the first thing I want to mention is I know that tonight we are going to discuss how and when to return our students to in-person instruction. The first thing I want to say is that as I begin to present or begin to discuss this, that I think most folks are aware that Glendora Unified School District has really been on the forefront of returning students to in-person instruction. We are one of only 3 districts in all of East San Gabriel Valley to return students, which we on October 19th when the numbers were low. I have to say how incredibly proud I am of our entire district, our staff, our special education staff who came back and dutifully have been serving our students ever since October. They have done a tremendous job with our students, and I thank them for their service and their sacrifice. That also goes for all of our service providers, our school psychologists, our OTs, our speech pathologists, our case carriers, everyone who's been doing assessments. They have done a phenomenal job since then. It is worth saying that when we applied for our TK2 waiver back in October, the numbers were relatively low at that time, and since then, our application for all 5 of our schools has been approved. On November 9th, we heard an absolutely wonderful and well-organized presentation from our TK2 principals and their teachers regarding their thoughts and their best planning around how to return our TK2 students to school. Why? Because it is what we want. We want our students to be in person. I think I've probably said as superintendent numerous times to numerous people that the best place for our students is with their teachers in their classroom. Our plan on November 9th was to bring our students back on January 4th and January 11th. Since then, we have had an astronomical spike in the number of COVID cases throughout the county and within our Glendora community and within our district. As you know, every communication that I have sent out to the community has highlighted in bold that we will continue to do everything possible to bring students back to in-person instruction when it is safe to do so. When it is safe to do so. Nobody wants kids in seats more than I do as superintendent or our parents or our board of education. I know that to be true. I know that to be a fact. It must be safe to do so. With the county-wide numbers and district spike in cases, we've had, even in fact, just last week, 15 positive cases within our GUSD staff and or students. So here's what I'm going to say. When we bring students back, there is a lot of data that says that students or children don't spread COVID as quickly, or they're asymptomatic, or they're not as infectious, or they don't get as sick, and all of those many things. However, when we bring students back, we bring adults back. Lots and lots of adults. And what our data shows is that our adults are contracting and becoming positive at a rate 4 times higher than our students. So I need people to bear in mind that any plan to bring back students, and in TK2, which by the way, just so the public knows, our TK2 waiver was approved. That is the only waiver we have. There is no other waiver for any other grade level. So if we were to bring back our TK2 students, that would be somewhere upwards of 1,000 students and over 100 personnel, adults. And it's where the adults that COVID spreads. And we have seen the exact same spike in our district as we have seen in the community and in the county. Also, I want to bring to the public's attention and to the board's attention that this week, Glendora High School is shut down for Department of Public Health investigation. And they will be closed all of this week and probably the following week because of the spread at that school in our district. And those are our kids and our adults, namely, and our adults and students. And it's scary. So in trying to determine how to proceed with our TK2 waiver and return of students in person, we took a lot of data into consideration because we really needed to know. Because I will say that for me personally and as a professional, who is, by the way, the person who has the safety of all students and staff squarely on my shoulders, right? So that when I weigh these decisions, they weigh very, very heavily on me. And I do think about the emotional well-being of students, and I do think about how difficult distance learning is. So I tried to collect as much data as I possibly could because personally and professionally, it feels, or it is in my mind, counterintuitive to bring back, like I said, over 1,100 people in the middle of the highest spike of COVID. So we did survey, we asked our principals to individually call each and every TK2 teacher to determine on a scale of 1 to 5 how fearful they were about their health as an adult and the individuals in their household. But also if there was any concerns about hybrid, any concerns about any other piece of it. 68% of our teachers were either fearful or had a great deal of angst or apprehension around returning in January 4th for those 2 reasons. That's almost 70%. That's a lot of our staff. We did a TK2 parent confirmation opt-out letter, which was our letter to our TK2 parents asking them if they would stay in distance learning and or would they prefer to return to school. Immediately after sending out the opt-out letter, I received many calls of concern and emails from TK2 parents, and people would stop me pretty much everywhere that I went. And I don't know if our trustees have experienced the same thing, but what should I do? This is the question. Dr. De Leon, I want to keep my child home. I do not feel safe. Remarks similar to the ones sent tonight. But the fact that my child might be re-rostered to another teacher is something that I cannot accept. You've given us an impossible decision. We love our teachers. Our teachers are outstanding. We do not want to lose our teacher. So for those in the public who are not aware, part of the TK2 plan to return to in-person would be that students whose families decided to keep them in distance learning could and would likely be reassigned to another separate teacher so that the teachers with in-person hybrid could concentrate on those kids in person. So that meant that we would have all of the parents essentially, or the majority of the parents who would say they opted out would have another teacher. And that was it. I think something that parents were just unable to accept. They really love their teachers and they want their teachers. And so I had many teachers, or excuse me, parents who emailed and called and said, we can't make that decision. That is not, we are unable to make that decision. We don't have any idea how to answer this survey. So that was the information I got back from that. I also asked our elementary principals, who are experts in the field, who are in the ranks doing the work, working with our teachers and parents, to give me their ideas, comments, or concerns about returning on January 4th and January 11th, which they enumerated. And the board has seen those concerns. And some of those concerns are, and I will tell you some of them. They mentioned some of the same things, that to bring students back in the middle of the spike would put people at risk at their school, that they felt that they needed more time before resuming a safe return to in-person instruction, and that pausing would support a greater cause of decreasing COVID cases while increasing community health. Also, it would give more time for planning, re-looking at the hybrid plan, how we bring kids back, whether we continue with the plan as the way it was or adjust it some way. So there were significant concerns about returning on January 4th from our principals as well. And, that to say that it's important to us what our sites say, what our teachers and our principals have to say, because they're working at the sites, and we try not to make these decisions without input from all the people who are doing the work, right? So that was important. Also, we have heard many concerns come from, and I have to tell you, they are the most phenomenal people because they've been back in service since October, but our special education teachers and service providers as well have been calling and expressing or emailing and expressing concerns about return, and being fearful for themselves and their family. We especially hear from our support providers who have one-to-one individual contact with students, like our occupational therapists, our speech pathologists, our school psychs who do assessments and all of those things. So all of that, oops, I'm so sorry. All of that being said, it is my recommendation that Glendora Unified School District, oh, there was one other thing I wanted to mention too. I'm so sorry, I almost forgot. I also wanted to mention, because we do often, we hear from our community what our surrounding districts are doing and what they have done. And we are often, they say, well, Claremont's doing this, or Bonita's doing that, or Covina's doing this. So I did survey our surrounding districts, and I think it's important to understand that only one of our surrounding districts alongside of us brought special education small cohorts back in October. One other brought a few small special education cohorts back in December and ended up shutting those classrooms the following week because of COVID spike. I can tell you that in all of our surrounding districts, there has been no other submission of a TK2 waiver and no other or plans to do so. Just wanted to point that out. So when I say that we are committed as a district to bringing students back when it is safe, we are. We went through all the proper procedures to try to do it. It's just simply not safe at this time. So I did want to point all of those things out about our neighboring districts. Some of them have had some after-school programs. Many of those have been reduced and are shut down at this time as well. So I just want folks to know that we have actually been on the forefront, and it's not like we're doing this and everybody else is bringing TK2 back. I just wanted everyone to know that for the public. So as superintendent and taking all things into consideration, it is my recommendation that we pause the return to in-person school for our TK2 students, which is planned for January 4th and 11th, and reevaluate the return to in-person instruction on February 1st after the COVID spike. And at that point, depending on whether we have flattened the curve or where the numbers are, we will decide reopening dates at that time. So that is my presentation, and I am open for whatever questions you might have at this point.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions from the board. Mrs. Merkley.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I really don't have any questions. I just, I've been struggling with this for a while, trying to decide what to do because we need to, we know, we all want the kids back on campus, but it really isn't safe with this surge and this spike. So, Dr. DeLeon, thank you for doing this, for being courageous enough, because I know you have really received a lot of flack and grief. And so I just want you to know I support you. It's hard, but you're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Trustee Merkley.
Dr. Fernando.
I mean, just to acknowledge Dr. DeLeon, thank you, first of all, for the data. Because I think out of all these decisions, it's very easy to make emotional decisions that are based on emotion or what might feel right, as opposed to what is actually right based on the data. So if we follow science, we know that right now, given the spike of 13,000 cases, this is not a time for us to be gathering in any shape or form. And with that, I think it also needs to be said that we need to maintain the safety of our employees who are putting their lives sort of on the edge by their commitment to education. And while we would want them to be face-to-face, because that's the best way of education, now is not the time. These are unprecedented times. So I appreciated in your presentation that it was a data-informed presentation, because I think many decisions are made right now in the midst of these difficult times through emotion. So thank you for that. So the surveys that you've done and the communication with the multiple teachers, principals, and their stakeholders.
Thank you, Trustee Fernando. May I briefly just make one clarification, and I'm not sure whether, I just want to make sure it's very, very clear that when we pause our return to, our reevaluation of our return on February 1st, all programs will be paused. Our small cohorts will be paused. Our services and assessments will also be paused at that point and will not be reevaluated until we see the numbers on February 1st. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone. No, unless tomorrow comes in. So also Trustee Borg asked about athletics. We are supposed to get information from CIF tomorrow about athletics. So I can't really say right now what that's going to be. So as soon as I get that, we can say what that is. They're giving us new guidance. We're told that because they are outdoor activities, that they may continue to allow that to occur on small scale. So many districts, though, have paused athletics as well, but we will wait till CIF and find out what they say tomorrow.
Mr. Ellenson.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. DeLeon, for a comprehensive presentation. I appreciated the data as well and the efforts that the administrators went through to hear from staff and from families. That's what all of the board has been doing for the past several years, but more intently over the past several weeks and months. As the more input we get, the better decisions we can make. So I appreciate that comprehensive presentation. I also appreciate that everyone in our community is in a different place on the spectrum of what they're comfortable with and what the balancing of priorities comes out at for them. All of the conversations that I've had personally and those that I've heard from inside the district and out supports that every person I've met is in a different place on how they feel about the virus and what decisions they make in the best interest of their families. I appreciate the fact that those who want to stay home right now have the option of staying home, but that those that do make the decision that it's safe for them to balance and choose in-person learning don't have that option right now. I agree that it would not be prudent or appropriate to bring back the highest number of students and staff during the worst part of a global pandemic. We are in our final week of 2020 before a 2-week holiday break, where the numbers are going up every single day and expected to continue to increase, where ICU capacity will be down to almost 0% when around Christmas time. And it will take several weeks after that for the spike to really hit and hopefully start to flatten. It's my hope that it will start to flatten towards the end of January, so that your recommendation to the board of a pause in the reopening plan and a pause for those that are already back is prudent and appropriate. I also recognize that despite the state and county shutting down almost everything else recently, they did not shut down schools, and they did not revoke the waivers that had been granted. I was ready to reopen under this waiver, as I think everyone was. I believe that we can, under those circumstances, pre the spike. I think we could have done it, and we would have done it well. I have every faith in everyone that works in Glendora Unified and the families that people would follow the rules and do it appropriately, as we did with the 20% that we brought back and have done so very carefully. But that we can't do that right now. We cannot safely return our staff and our students right now. It was my understanding that we tentatively planned to return on January 4th, subject to reevaluating based on what the circumstances are at that time. I support tentatively planning to return February 1st, subject to reevaluating the numbers at that time. And I want to thank LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger and her office for approving the waiver so that we can make this local decision on what is safest for our staff and our students. The last 2 points that I will make is that I think it is a priority of mine that we do everything we can not to re-roster our elementary students. We have to keep them with their teacher if at all possible. I understand the constraints, but that's a high priority for me. And to do everything we can for our high school seniors. I appreciate the fact that our high school students are not having the worst time on distance learning. They're doing well with the distance learning, I think better than our elementary and middle school, but that the social emotional events that they're missing out on, and those milestones in their development are significant, and I think most so for our seniors. So not necessarily academic, but for those things that we can do, visual and performing arts, sports, anything we can do outdoors at a distance safely, when the numbers are appropriate, that is a priority for me as well. Thank you for hearing this, for taking the input from everyone within the district, from our families and our staff, and today from the board.
Thank you, Trustee Ellenson. May I make a clarification? My recommendation is to reevaluate on February 1st and select a reopening date at that time, rather than reopen on February 1st. Thank you.
Mrs. Merkley. I'm sorry, I'm looking right at her. Mrs. Reuter.
Thank you very much. Again, I want to thank Dr. De Leon for this report, and really the principals and teachers as well that helped bring this data forward so that we could help make this decision. And I know that in the teacher survey, there was some expressed concern over safety and health, but there was also some expressed concern of not feeling like they were totally ready and on top of the hybrid model at this point in time. And our Ed Services Department had already started trying to help provide additional supports for that hybrid model. So could you tell us a little bit about what's going on to help support those teachers to be ready as far as professional development is concerned?
Absolutely. Thank you, Trustee Reuter. I'm so sorry I forgot that part. Yes, so we have, thanks to Dr. Summers, a training called Canvas for Littles, which started last week on Wednesday the 9th and has 2 more dates on January 13th and February 10th. It's a 3-part series, and many of our teachers have participated in that. It's been absolutely wonderful. I have also asked Dr. Summers to please research and try to find during the month of January, so we can provide it during the month of January, any training, and there are trainings out there now that people have practiced more, hybrid teaching training. So how do I teach in-person kids with some kids remote at the same time? What does that look like? Which is separate from Canvas training. So she's working diligently to find that training as well, because as long as we're going to pause, I want to make sure that our teachers have as many opportunities as possible to receive more training and to become more comfortable, because likely when we return, and I say when because we will return to in-person at some point. We don't know that date yet, but we will. When we return, I want them to feel as comfortable as possible in managing, which is a challenge. It's difficult to manage teaching both in-person and remote at the same time. And so I want them to feel more comfortable, that they have more of ideas around that. So we're getting that training together as well. So thank you for bringing that up. I forgot.
That's great. I do appreciate that, because I certainly do want to take the time, and I understand these teachers' plates are very full, but if we are going to pause and give a little more time, let's try and get as prepared as possible. The next question that I'm going to ask might be a hard one for you to answer, in that I'm just wondering if on February 1st we reevaluate and we feel like the curve has sort of flattened back out as it was in October when we were applying for these waivers and all of that stuff, if it all lines up, can you give a best guess estimate of how long it would take to get everybody mobilized and into those classrooms then?
Oh boy.
I know, I know, but I just want to be realistic about a situation. Let's whatever the date is, if it's not February 1st and it's March 1st.
Although I remind people frequently that hope is not a strategy, I would hope that we would be able to re-engage within the month.
Okay. All right, well, and I think that I'll echo Mr. Ellenson's sentiments as far as that local decision is concerned. It has been out of our hands for this entire time, and everything but TK2 still remains to be out of our hands. But I think it is really important that when something is in our hands, that we use the data, that we listen to our teachers, that we listen to our families, and that we follow the principle that this board has set since this pandemic started back in March to keep people safe. So I'm with my other board members here saying that safety is important, and taking a pause is appropriate given what the numbers are doing right now, and that we were attempting to bring back the largest chunk of students and teachers, in the middle of what is sure to be a very high spike. But I do want to voice my opinion in that when it is safe, I want us to go. And as quick as is appropriately possible. So thank you again for this presentation, and I'll look forward to hearing from CIF. I know that that's a big deal for a lot of folks in this community, and we'll see if being outdoors can allow students to continue to participate in the sports and visual and performing arts. So thank you very much, and I support your decision.
Thank you, Trustee Reuter.
Thank you. They've all said everything I wanted to say. I appreciate the data, the decisions being made based on data. I appreciate the time it took to consult with staff and have the principals yet resurvey parents and teachers again. Because I think there comes a point when surveys are, we over-survey sometimes, but these are so necessary. I agree that we need to get these kids back in the classroom, but above all, and there's one other group of people that I think we need to be concerned about, and that is our first responders that work in the hospitals. Those people are obviously getting the vaccination first, but they are very much on the line when our hospitals are overcrowded and more people are coming to them with a need. So that's another group that we need to think about too. And I know some of our families are involved in that profession, so I'm adding that to my list. Any other comments? Any
Can I add
follow-up?
one?
Yes, of
May I add
course.
one thing? You reminded me, I almost forgot by you reminding me about the first responders. We are actually, as a district, celebrating our first responders in our Glendora Good section of this week's Gazette. And so that is actually highlighted in there because we do appreciate our health workers and our first responders. And it's a surprise who our first healthcare worker will be. That is highlighted in the Gazette, but we want everyone to know that Glendora Unified supports all the folks on the front line who are out there every single day. Thank them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next down on the list of our agenda here is staff presentations and information. Dr. Kelson's going to talk to us about secondary reopening plans after we go through all this.
And this will be after we determine a date when we reevaluate. But once that happens, this is the secondary plan.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees, Dr. DeLeon, and esteemed community. Thank you for the opportunity to present the secondary reopening plan. I would like to introduce the 4 secondary principals who will be appearing this evening via a remote presentation. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kelson, would it be possible, is Patrick able to film on another, so that the board can see this one here, or this one here? This
All
one's
right,
not on.
I am hoping that we are supposed to be talking now. Mr. Carter, if you could perhaps unmute so that we can hear the board, so that if they have any questions throughout, we can interact. So I wanted to thank our board members and Dr. DeLeon for having us tonight, and also for allowing us to present virtually this evening. We had foreseen some challenges with all 4 of us trying to have a nice flow as we shared the mic, and poor Mrs. Campos would have to come and clean it each time we switch spots. So we hope this has a better flow. Tonight, as we, the secondary school principals team, present, we want to note that all of these plans are tentative. They apply as we are allowed by the state and county and as deemed safe. So Mr. Osborne, would you like to start us off?
Good evening, everybody. President, board, members of the board, cabinet, Dr. DeLeon, thank you so much for having us. We also want to just thank you for accommodating our need to meet virtually today. It means a lot to our team. I will be discussing our phase 2 return plans as Dr. Prince discusses our phase 3 plans. But before we do that, we want to thank our staff. At the middle school level, we've had 2 recent meetings the last 2 Thursdays. And we've had a tremendous amount of input from our staff, and we really, really value our staff and their ability to give us that input so we could create these plans. So the first plan that we're going to cover is support for phase 2 students. As you might remember, phase 2 students include those approved students that would be in special education, English learners, foster youth, and homeless. And our first model would be a learning lab model. Students would come on campus 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, from 8:15 to 12:30. And they would be in a classroom in a small cohort, no more than 12 students to 2 staff members. And during that time, our staff members would be able to really help those students access the online curriculum instruction, give them on-task reminders, help them with clarification, support them with organization, and really build the connections. The social emotional piece is really, really important to us. And so having those relationships would be absolutely key for these students. At Sandburg, we started a pilot a week ago and brought back a few students, and so far that is working well. But as we all are aware, we do have concerns with the spike in COVID in our area, and support a pause for this next month until we could reevaluate on February 1st. Next slide, please. Our second model would be specific to supporting students that are English language learners. These students would come on campus after their traditional school hours from 2 to 3:30, 3 days a week. And the focus here would be specific to English language development and, of course, socialization. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Prince as she's going to discuss our Phase 3 reopening plans.
Right, for our phase 3 of students, this looks like on-campus office hours support. So we have our virtual office hours from 1:30 to 2:30 daily, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we would like to invite students back on for in-person support, sticking with those small cohorts of 12 with their qualified teachers and getting academic, organizational, social, emotional, and also, as Mr. Osborne had talked about, having that all-important connection. I know I've met numerous students in the past few weeks for the first time in person at our drive-throughs. So getting to have that connection in person with our teachers is also an important component. And then we're also looking, each of these phases is as we get approval to bring larger percentages back on campus. So then we look at the next piece of that, academic supports for students who are chronically absent or at promise. Looking at on-campus and teen center learning lab models where they are there from 8:30 to 12:30, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. This is again in those small, stable cohorts of no more than 12 students. It's a support focus with online instruction, on-task reminders, curriculum clarification, support organization, basically somebody to be there and say, hey, why do you have a game on your screen instead of your teacher's Zoom? Or I see you struggling to find that paper, can we help you with that? So really supporting the education there in person. And we have worked with our teachers as well as Dr. Summers on devising a rubric with multiple measures to help identify and prioritize students so that we can have a living running list. And every time we get more permissions for a larger percentage, we could see how many students does that equal at each of our schools and pull those from our rubric to be able to meet the students who need it the most. And now I turn it over to Mr. Letourneau to talk about Whitcomb.
Hello, everybody. For me, my situation is obviously going to be different than Dr. Prince and Eric and even Matt at the high school. We opened up on November 30th with 12 students and 2 teachers. We had our ed specialist teacher and Mr. Love, our English teacher, were both present. We selected the 12 students based on students with IEPs and, well, the same format that the rest of the group did. Where I ran into difficulty was on the first day that we were scheduled to come back, 4 parents called that day and told me that they had some great concerns due to the spike. And so we went from 2 teachers and 12 students right away to 2 teachers, 8 students. And then over the process of the first couple days, we went down to 3 students. And the reason for that was because of the being in the classroom and Zooming from the classroom. So they would be with one teacher. Maybe they'd be with Scott Garrison, my ed specialist teacher, for this one period that they had for English. And then when that period was done and it was time to Zoom into another class on campus, it made it very difficult for them to concentrate. It made it difficult, even with earphones on, because it's one thing just to listen to what your teacher is saying from a different classroom, but when you have to respond to that teacher while the teacher is up in the front Zooming his regular class, it just made for a lot of confusion. It made for a lot of feedback. It made for a lot of disruption. And my kids at Whitcomb, they need to be able to concentrate highly and to be able to be focused on that. So we went from 12 to 8 to 3. And it just was very difficult to make anything happen in a very cohesive manner. And so, like my colleagues here, I kind of shut it down for the next couple days because they weren't getting what they needed out of it. I'm not saying my colleagues did. I just had to shut it down for a couple days until we go through vacation, because the parents of my kids were very concerned about coming back right after vacation with all the spikes. That's what I constantly keep hearing, is the spikes. They miss it, the kids miss it, they want to be back, but my parents are also fantastic in knowing that if it's not safe, then it's not the time to come back. So we'll just keep working, and I'll keep working with my colleagues, keep working with my folks at the DO, and we'll figure out how to come back in a safe manner for my students. Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent De Leon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Definitely a unique time in the school year. Want to wish everybody a happy holidays as well. It's easy to forget about that when we're so busy, but it's a pleasure to be here. Tonight, we're going to talk about where we're at in the high school and where we hope to go timeline-wise, and give some updates on some things that are happening at the high school. So we returned fall athletics for conditioning October 12th, which we were really excited about, and it's been going great. And October 19th, we brought back some select performing arts, visual and performing arts programs as well, and that's been wonderful as well. I know that Mr. Llewellyn, when we presented about the reopening of athletics and visual and performing arts, had mentioned the smiling faces that we anticipated seeing, and that's definitely been the case. It's been great to see our kids back on campus and accessing campus in a way that gets them some socialization outside the home. On October 19th, we also returned our phase 1 students and staff for in-person instruction, assessments, and services. And then the ballpark number of students that access our campus, I should probably say campuses, because we do have students that go to different facilities in the district for various activities or athletics. Dr. Prince is nice enough to let us use her facilities for cross-country, for example. So we do have a number of students that are able to access athletics, activities, visual performing arts, and it's been really neat. Next slide, please. So the phase returns that we've heard about are very similar at the high school. I talked about the phase 1 return of students and staff for in-person instruction that's taken place since October 19th, including the assessments and services that take place on campus throughout the week. We have had to quarantine many of our cohorts for our in-person instruction. We currently have 8 cohorts that were learning in person on our campus, and 7 of those 8 cohorts have had to quarantine at one point or another because of a positive case within the cohort. With that said, if you look at our athletics program, it's outdoors. You look at our visual performing arts outdoors, 53 cohorts, only 3 have been shut down to date, and you're looking at a 5%, 2-week quarantine rate for those cohorts. So we're looking at data. You see a large difference between indoor and outdoor activity, but it should be said in good faith as well that we have little to no evidence that there's transmission occurring on our campuses, even for the in-person instruction. Oftentimes our contact tracing, what we learn is that the positive case has made contact with a family member who is positive, who contracted it from a workplace somewhere else, for example. We're not seeing the inter-cohort positive cases. We have been put on pause by the Department of Health due to the sheer numbers and increase of cases for students and staff on our campus. And there is a pending outbreak investigation because we've met the criteria, the number needed to do that. But again, timing wise, if there ever was a good time as we head into winter break and during finals week, allowing our kids to take the time to focus on their studies this last week, I suppose it would be the best time. Phase 2, similar to what my colleagues have talked about tonight, the access and support that our students can get in a distance learning lab model that would have students come to campus. And we do have a prioritized list of students that would be able to do this and receive the opportunity to remote into their classes while on campus. We also have a plan for after-school English learner academies to take place on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 3 p.m. And the details of that are being firmed up and ready to go for when we're able to do that. And then phase 3 and phase 4, we're looking again at something similar, potential office hours model for certain groups of students. And then you look at phase 4, and again, talking about preparation, I want to give a shout out to my staff at Glendora High School. We've dialed in some 25 and 50% models that we really like. The logistics of them still being worked out, minor details, but we'll be ready to go when the time comes. And I'm really proud of our staff for the work that they've done and continue to do. And again, I think I should also mention, you talk about the transmissions not occurring on campus. That's a testament to our students and staff and our parents who are taking our kids to campus, following the protocols we've set forth. And it gives me great confidence and I'm really pleased with the fact that we're seeing such great, adherence to safety protocols. So recommendations, I know that it was mentioned a little bit earlier in this meeting that the state health department, the CIF is waiting for the state health department to release guidelines. Those were released later this afternoon. In the details, it's quite a long document. I won't go too deep into, but it is worth noting that under the most recent state release guidelines, a couple of things I do want to mention, which is despite stay-at-home orders, the state health department for youth sports would allow the conditioning to take place as we currently have it in place. So we are going to propose that we continue that as we prepare for our athletic seasons, but also because of the benefits that we see for our students. And that goes for our arts programs as well. Again, we talk about the smiling faces, the mental health piece that comes along with that, but also the preparation because of the time that's needed to master their crafts and whatever they're participating in is really important, especially as we are hopeful, and keeping our fingers crossed for an upcoming, fall, winter, and spring season. Now, you'll find if you go into the most recent guidelines from the Department of Health at the state level, they don't anticipate competition being able to start or guidelines for the competition piece to even be released until January 4th. However, like I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, the conditioning piece is still there, which we're so grateful for, and hope to continue, pending a positive resolution of the community outbreak investigation, which I anticipate will be positive. I'm hopeful will be positive and allow us to continue once we have that break during the winter break. And then when we talk about in-person instruction, as a parent of a K-12 student, I can empathize, with those who are eager to see their students back on our campuses. And I can empathize with those that, are cautious and, totally understandable. And when we look at, the sheer number of cases and the spike that we've seen recently, the staffing issues it potentially creates, the number of students that, when you shut down a cohort, when you open up a cohort or cohorts of students come on campus, you can take one step forward, but as soon as you close them down, you're taking 2 steps back because they're transitioning back into distance learning for 2 weeks. And you have to hope that when they come back, they don't get sent back home again. And right now, that's what we're seeing is just due to the positive cases that are in our school community and local community, that it's impacting the ebb and flow of the in-person instruction. So, we want to jump all in and get as many kids back as fast as possible. And we believe that the best way to do that is to begin phasing in students for in-person instruction when it's deemed most safe to do so that we can maintain the continuity of learning that comes with that. So we are prepared. We are excited for what the future holds, but we know that right now, seeing the numbers of cases, it is hitting close to home for so many of our students and so many of our staff members that the safest thing to do right now, we believe, is to pause until it's safe to do so to bring people back for in-person instruction. However, the outdoor component where we are seeing a much lower rate of closure of cohorts, we would like to continue come January 4th.
Well, thank you to the site leaders for this presentation. I'm going to open it up to board members if they have any questions. Mrs. Merkley?
And that is it for our presentation. We would be happy to answer any questions the board might have for us.
Are they able to hear us? I can hear them, but can they hear us?
Can they hear us if we ask comment?
Jen, can you hear any questions?
And Mr. Carter, we're unable to hear anyone else speaking. So if there are questions, you may need to translate them into the microphone for us so we're able to hear.
Okay, Mrs. Merkley, why don't you let Mr. Carter know?
Okay, well, no questions, just thank them for all the hard work they've put into planning this.
Okay. They want to thank you for all the hard work that you put into it. Can you hear me? Hello?
I don't think they can.
Might keep going. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. Let's see. Hello? Can you hear me?
We heard that, guys. Thank you very much for your confidence in our team. We appreciate the accolades very much. Thank you.
Was
Dr.
it my voice or whose voice did you hear?
Dr. Fernando, do you have anything you'd like to? No. Mr. Ellenson?
No comment.
Mrs. Reuter?
I have questions, but I don't know if we're gonna be able to figure it
Yeah.
out.
We'll give it another minute here.
Can you guys hear us? No.
Oh,
Are you good?
thumbs up.
There you go.
Yes, we can hear you well.
So,
Okay. Dr. Fernando?
no comments.
No comments? Mr. Ellenson?
I just want to thank the secondary principals for putting together a comprehensive report and putting together their plans for when it is safe to do it, their suggested path forward. It goes along with what I said before is I want the county and the state to protect everyone with guidelines, but I want local decision-making to be done. I want to be leaders, as Glendora Unified always has done. I appreciate what our neighboring districts are doing, but I also appreciate that we are forging our path forward based on what we think is appropriate in the best interest of the students and considering the health and safety of staff as well. So thank you for doing that, and I think everyone will be pleased to support that phased reopening approach.
Thank you.
Mrs. Reuter?
I'm not sure if they really actually hear us. Okay, they do. Okay, look, she's laughing. I made a joke. Okay. Okay, I just have a little bit more of an observation in that I really do appreciate the attention that all 4 schools have put in to try to figure out how to service different students with different kinds of needs. The small cohorts, the sort of learning labs, the different ways that you all have tried to figure out how to be able to service students in person. What I did hear from Mr. Letourneau is that the true sort of hybrid model cohort is a challenge. That what it means to be in a cohort is that students stay in a room. They cannot go from room to room. They can't change from math class to English class to science class. They've got to stay in that room, have their maybe first period class with that teacher, but then they have to Zoom to the subsequent, say, 3rd and 5th period class or whatever the case might be. And as it sounds, that was a challenge for the students, that they didn't really expect maybe that that's what it was going to look like or found it challenging once they were in that model. Would you say that that's an accurate statement, Mr. Letourneau?
I think you're spot on with that, Mrs. Reuter. It's, are we okay? I can be heard?
Yes.
So yeah, that's spot on. And you know, at first we were hoping bring back all teachers, but the county said absolutely not. And that kind of foiled our plans because the kids need to go from period to period. And as soon as that got put on hold, we knew we were faced with a big time dilemma. And you know, my feeling is always, let's try it, let's see what happens, and then we work out the kinks. Well, there were too many kinks to work out. To be effective for these kids. There was too many disruptions. I mean, at any one time I had 6 kids in one class, 6 in another, and I could have 6 different subjects going on at the same time. And even the earphones aren't going to block it out when they need to respond to the teacher on their particular class. So it was a challenge beyond challenge.
And that's half of what is necessarily allotted per class by the guidelines, right? So the guidelines say you can have 12 kids in a class. You had it broken down into half of that per class, and they still found it challenging with what their peers in the room were doing or whatever the case might have been.
Correct.
Well, I really do appreciate that real life experience that they have, that you were able to provide for us for what it looks like when you try and go to multiple classes on campus in this specific type of cohort model. So thank you very much for providing and for being honest about what it was like, because we've just really got to figure out how to move forward. Families have to figure out how to move forward and what choice to make, and everybody's got to work together. So I really do appreciate your candor as far as what that first couple of weeks looked like for you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then I do wonder, one thing that I've been hearing a lot from the community, and so I do need to ask, and it's going to put Mr. Brummett on the spot a little bit, is when you're looking at all these 4 phases, I really appreciate how it's all laid out, but I hear a real need to do something for our seniors. And I just wonder if you might be able to address any sort of thoughts that you and your staff may have, or I understand servicing different kids that we already have in the phase 1 and the phase 2 first, obviously, but as we start to look to who can come back when we're permitted to and when it's safe to do so, what sort of thought have you all put in for your seniors?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you asking that question. Seniors are definitely on our mind as we're going through the planning of the phases and for the activities. There's so many traditions and milestones that come with the second semester of a senior year. So when we look at planning and we look at possible returns, depending on how far out it goes to bring students back that aren't from specifically targeted other groups, we are having discussions about seniors and potentially being a prioritized group depending on when and how we could possibly do that. So our seniors are definitely on the forefront of our conversations. As we're looking at planning and options. When we look at a 25% model and you look at having 4 different grade levels at a school site, if we get to a point in time where it's taking longer than we hope, our seniors, we're looking at potential models that could benefit them to get them back first, to get those last moments on our campus for some in-person instruction and for that social piece as well. Because again, the second semester we realize is just so important. And the same thought is, we're also looking for ways to celebrate them in unique ways beyond the classroom as well. As we look to reinvent and just recreate traditions that we hopefully won't have to recreate too much towards the end of the semester, but throughout the semester even, seniors are definitely on our mind. We're starting a staff senior committee where we're going to look at some of the things we have in place and how we can tweak them if we need to and have plan A, B, and C. So yeah, we're really excited about some of the ideas that we have. And then when you look at the in-person piece, they're also being discussed in our groups as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Now that our wonderful IT guys have figured out how to link us all up, I just have one more question, if you don't mind, please, to Dr. Prince. And you mentioned the phase 3 students, the support focus of academic, organizational, social, emotional, and connections. I'm assuming that you're working with teachers to sort of identify those students. And is that going to then be sort of a rolling model as far as, do they meet a goal and then sort of roll back out so you can bring somebody in? Or how do you choose those phase 3 students? And then how do you deal with then that cohort sort of changes? If 2 students meet some goals or meet some needs and maybe they can roll out and 2 more students come in, then how does that work? So either Dr. Prince or Mr. Osborne, you know, how do you choose those phase 3 students, and then how do you add more in, or how do you continue meeting the needs of all the different students?
So that was actually a large topic that we were working with our teachers and Dr. Summers on, with teachers who had come into the logistics committee, and looking at, our hope is, I'm an optimist, everybody kind of knows that about me. Our hope is that we can continue to get more and more higher percentage of approval from the county, and then we can continue to add without having to rotate students out. If that isn't the case and we see a large number, then we can certainly work with our logistics team to reevaluate and see if there are times where we do have to rotate students out. But one of our concerns is we've invited them in because they're struggling, and now they're not struggling likely because they've had this sort of support. So we don't want to rotate students out and have that cycle start back over again and get them discouraged. Mr. Osborne, do you have more you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that we're really trying to take an objective approach to this by using a rubric. And the rubric has multiple measures, both academic, social, emotional. There's a variety of things that we discussed with our teachers and Dr. Summers. And so as we identify students, we're going to put them on a priority list. And so when it's deemed safe, we'll know exactly who we can bring back. And then we'll just continue to go down that prioritized list, and it'll be very uniform and very, very objective using the rubric.
I appreciate you all. Thank you all very much for the lot of thought and a lot of work that goes into planning for secondary. It's not like elementary where kids are all staying in one place at one time and you can sort of figure that out somewhat easily. The changing of the classes and everything feels very overwhelming to me. And I appreciate, again, Mr. Letourneau giving it the going first that way and giving it the old college try and reporting back, and then all the efforts that you all are making to try and meet the needs of all of our students one way or another. So again, thank you for this presentation, and I really do sincerely appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I as well will echo my colleagues. You're so appreciated, and it's hard to hear some of the news, but we have 6,500 students in this district and 25 at the high school, 2,500. It's going to be monumental with kids trading classes, and for that reality that Mr. Letourneau shared is really eye-opening about the cohorts and having kids with different teachers at different times in the same room together and being able to respond without disrupting your neighbor or whatever. I can see the challenges, and again, the bottom line is we want to keep our families and our students and our teachers and staffs all safe. So I appreciate all of the efforts you're putting in, overtime, being here tonight, hours and hours beyond what you're needed for, but obviously you're needed for this. Just a big, huge thanks. I appreciate it. Dr. De Leon, did you?
Absolutely. Thank you, principals. You did a wonderful job. I have to tell you that how challenging, I'm sure you're well aware how challenging the idea of bringing back over 1,000 students, 2,500 students in small cohorts of 12 in a meaningful way when they can't switch classrooms. I can tell you can put all 80 superintendents in the entire LA County together in a room, and the one question we all have is, how are you doing secondary? So the fact that the Glendora principals have figured it out is amazing. So my hat is off to our secondary principals. They've done an outstanding job, and I can tell that when we are able to reopen, that very soon thereafter we'll have other districts coming to see how we're doing it. So thank you so much for all of your hard work, your great ideas, and how creative you've been in trying to take that one bite of the elephant. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, all of you. Great job tonight. Thank you. May I suggest about like a 3-minute bite? And then I have a comment. Can we do it? All right. Thank you. Thank you all. Before we take a short stretch. We're going to take a 2-hour stretch. We're at the 2-hour point. It's time for a short bio break. But before we do that, I do want to tell everybody and all of our staff and families that are watching that I will be sending out a letter tomorrow with further details of our plan going forward and the pause. For all of our students and staff who are in session tomorrow, please, in the meantime, please do report to school tomorrow. We are continuing with our small cohorts, so please do report to school tomorrow. And you will receive a letter and we will go from there. Except for the high school, which we know is closed because of the DPH investigation. Thank you. Time for a short break, 9 o'clock, 5 minutes. Sure. Reconvene at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. We are on to public hearing. The public hearing is now open regarding the intention of the Board of Education to appoint Dr. Edward Potter as its representative on the Personnel Commission for a 3-year term beginning December 20th. Are there any public comments regarding this hearing, Mrs. Wells? No. With no public comment, do I need to? The public hearing is over, right? All right, public hearing number 2. The public hearing is now open regarding the determination that the district has sufficient textbooks and instructional materials for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Are there any public comments regarding this hearing? The public hearing is now closed. Public input. Speakers may address the Board of Education on non-agenda and agenda items. Board policy requires that public presentations to the board comply with the procedures as previously listed on the agenda. Mrs. Wells will now read the public input.
All right, this first comment is from Tara Gollier, Goller. Good afternoon. I was informed to message my public comment to this email. I request to come in on the December 14th Board of Education meeting to state my comment. The concern I wanted to present to you tonight is the excessive workload in distance learning. I just want to preface this. I am overall a good student with a 4.0 GPA and have good study habits. I stay on top of my work without having late assignments, but I have still experienced the negative mental health effects that come with distance learning. As students face a day that looks like this, wake up, go to class, do homework for hours on end, and finally get a little sleep. Teachers say that they understand how we feel and tell us to relax on Wellness Wednesdays. But the overwhelming amount of homework we are assigned takes over any time to take care of ourselves. We shouldn't have to spend all of our days doing homework. Teachers need to be more accommodating as home life and situation of every student is different. There could be students that have been tremendously impacted by COVID. However, this is not an excuse to open schools back up early. This is an issue that must be addressed as soon as possible within our current circumstances. This dilemma is hurting us students mentally. That is nothing compared to physically endangering ourselves by going back to school as COVID cases continue to skyrocket. I ask you to hold teachers and staff more accountable to ensure that students are thriving mentally and physically during these times. As students are engulfed in a mountain of work, our motivation to continue declines, and I hope that it's GUSD's first priority to prevent this. Thank you. GHS sophomore. This next comment is from Dr. Tanya Reeder. Members of the board and Dr. DeLeon. While watching the board meeting last night, I felt compelled to write. I was so appreciative of the interest and concern showed by all of you regarding the TK2 teachers' input about reopening. I had a renewed feeling of hope that we will be able to handle future reopening plans together and feel very confident that teachers' concerns will be taken seriously. These feelings echo the support and concern I feel from my own site administrators, Eric Osborne and Christy Espino. I was equally disheartened, however, by the number of speakers who expressed anger and concern with Dr. DeLeon's leadership. Those speakers in no way speak for me. A statistic was mentioned that 87% of Sandburg teachers agreed with their concerns. That was misleading and disingenuous, as the speaker did not mention the number of people who completed the survey. I did not complete the mentioned survey. The challenges have been numerous, to be sure, but we're all facing them. I know the district and site administration is working very hard to steer us through these trying times. I just wanted to make sure you know the angry and agitated voices last night do not represent anything like the majority. Thank you for all you do for our district. Sincerely, Dr. Tanya Reeder. This comment comes from Mr. Cliff Hamlow. I wish to express my thanks to the board and Dr. DeLeon for their work and leadership in attempting to get our schools open in these tumultuous times. Dr. DeLeon has come to us at a very difficult time in our society. She is a proven leader and is working with our board to meet the unusual challenges that are facing our schools. I believe that she is up to the challenge, and I hope in the near future that we will be able to reach out to her to get to know her in a live setting. I appreciate our board and believe that they are working with Dr. DeLeon to try to get students back in school. It might be in a hybrid option. Schools can't do what they would like, but Glendora does have a well-designed plan to return our students to the classrooms when they are allowed to by our state and county governmental agencies. We must be proactive with legislators in keeping the pressure on them for true local control. Parents can do this by contacting Assemblymember Blanca Rubio and Senator Anthony Portatino and letting them know their wishes as voters. Our schools are important to our community. Providing options for parents who want their children in the classroom and for those who do not want their children to go back to the classroom. In doing so, we must realize that there are only so many funds available. Thank you, board members and Dr. DeLeon, for your committed service to the Glendora community. Cliff Hamlow, Chair, Glendora Chamber Legislative Action Committee and former mayor of Glendora. This next comment is from Helen Glaze, to whom it may concern. I am writing to indicate my support for the recent initiatives put forward by the GUSD School Board and Dr. DeLeon. I appreciate the commitment to doing what we can to level the playing field for all children in our district. It is clear that Dr. DeLeon has been a proponent of this in her prior district positions, and for this reason, I have been supportive of her work and excited about her move to Glendora. I understand that there has been a very heated debate on personal issues surrounding Dr. DeLeon's communications with her staff. I cannot speak to that or really even form an opinion based on my limited direct experience or with teachers making those accusations. I do worry, however, that the vitriol aimed at Dr. DeLeon by our wider community may be related to her position on pursuing equity. I will continue to keep my mind open on these personal issues and hope that teachers, parents, and the district can work through properly established channels of dispute resolution, with the involvement of the teachers' union perhaps, to resolve these conflicts in a way that allows for the district to move forward. This next comment is from NB. I have been watching all the board meetings online since the school year started. It's always been very hard for me to attend in person, and I hope you continue to stream them even after we are back in the classroom. I have been saddened and shocked by the mob mentality and anger during the public portion of the meeting. I have considered coming there myself, but honestly don't know if I could handle those people. With that said, if possible, so people can hear another side, here are some things that I would say in the open meeting portion. None of us parents work with Dr. DeLeon. I really cannot say if the allegations of a toxic work environment are true or not. I think we are showing behavior we would discourage our kids from believing so much secondhand info. Why are teachers not speaking up? How many responded to this survey being mentioned versus how many teachers do we have? Is it our job to get into dispute between the teachers and the superintendent? I'm not sure there are processes in place to address these things, and that's where it should live. Not here at these meetings. It's a waste of time, energy, and resources. Take your passion and let's address real concerns. For example, why are teachers allowed to take their frustrations out on the children in their online classes with no consequences? A parent expresses their concern to the principal and virtually nothing happens. Why is no one talking about the lack of education happening? My children are in middle school and they only meet with each class 2 days per week and less than an hour. There is no way this is fulfilling and required hours for public school. How does this fly as acceptable? Why are we not prepared as a district with a 1-to-1 tech ratio? Our district has lacked for years with this, way before this new superintendent, and I didn't see any parents up in arms about this. You all should have been. There is no reason all teachers have not been encouraged to do their continued education in digital learning. For years before we had to do this, why is no one talking about this? I love the passion, the drive to get involved, but let's make sure it's in the right place, which should be the children and their learning and not all of this other nonsense. Let's make sure we are setting a good example for our children of how to deal with change, not what to do when things don't go our way. This comment is from Lorena Acuna. Good evening, my name is Lorena Acuna and I'm a resident and parent in Glendora. There has been a bit of controversy on our new superintendent and I wanted to share a little bit of my experience with her. I participated in all the parent district meetings and many GUSD reopening and safety plan meetings this year. There was a lot of work done by the district staff to get all current plans in place. Dr. DeLeon decided to help with the progress while still finishing her last days at her previous position. She has joined our district at a very difficult time, and I believe her and GUSD staff have been working nonstop to implement what we have in place. My experience with Dr. DeLeon is that she is receptive to parent and staff concerns and is trying her best to get our children back safely into our schools. She feels that in-person learning is clearly the best for our children rather than distance learning, but LA County is preventing us from reopening. Can we please give her a chance? I would ask everyone in our community to think not only of our children, teachers, and staff, but also our new superintendent with respect and kindness. This is out of her control because it is a city mandate. I encourage everyone in our community to make this a priority and to protect the health and safety of all students, families, and GUSD staff. Adhering to county guidelines will help us bring down COVID numbers and reopen schools safely for all students. This is from Sarah Costales. Here we go. I graduated from Glendora High School with a 4.2 GPA, having taken numerous AP classes. I was on ASB, was captain of the cheerleaders, and had pretty much every other extracurricular box checked on college applications. I was extraordinarily well equipped as I progressed through my academic experience at UCLA. Glendora Unified had fully prepared me to handle the rigors of a major university. Our beloved Glendora teachers from Sutherland through Goddard to GHS provided me with an unmatched educational backbone. High school friends and I agree that Mrs. Brown's AP English class our junior year was as challenging as anything in college, and we still reverently hear her voice when up against a deadline. Glendora schools are the #1 reason I moved back here 7+ years ago once we had our daughters. I was appalled at what I saw and heard at the GUSD board meeting in November. Put quite frankly, it would have been a cold day in hell in the Glendora that I grew up in before a crowd of parents cheered on a child speaking to a room of adults that way. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Mostly out of shock and deep concern for our community, I misogynistically drove into Glendora's social politics. I spoke up with 10 to 12 community members across the political spectrum. There were very difficult post-election conversations, many lasting hours. I talked to as many teachers as were willing to chat openly. I also met face-to-face with Dr. DeLeon and multiple board members and asked very direct questions based on feedback from the community and our teachers. Dr. DeLeon has impeccable credentials and was selected out of 100+ candidates. A consulting firm conducted the search on behalf of the board, and the board unanimously selected Dr. DeLeon as the top choice. Her start date was July 1. She has not had anywhere close to a reasonable chance to demonstrate what she can do for Glendora Unified, given the bizarre situation COVID has presented. I am confident that she wants students back in schools as badly, if not more so, than the rest of us. I'm also confident that she will keep everyone safe. The litigation floating around town is an active case, but the judge has dismissed Dr. DeLeon 4 separate and now final times. From what I can tell, she is an advocate for teachers, and she is listening to our teachers during this difficult time. Dr. DeLeon was very receptive to my feedback that there were missteps taken in the beginning regarding a lack of training on Canvas and communications that went out to parents that did not accurately reflect our teachers' reality. She was also very receptive to my asking that she prioritize Little League, and I have received feedback that there is real progress regarding Sandberg Fields. Dr. DeLeon has already accurately pinpointed communication from and to the district as an area that needs improvement overall. Please support her so that our kids can succeed. She needs more time and a fair shot. The Corey Ellenson recall is garbage and should be ignored. The grounds for the recall itself are bogus. Nobody who signed the recall form met with Corey to discuss their issues. If signatures can be collected, GUSD would have to pay approximately $250,000 to LA County to conduct the recall election. The recall signs are against code, although when approached by the county about removing them, Corey asked them that the signs be left alone. Our community is so mad and so sad, but we cannot mistake Glendora for Washington, D.C. or Sacramento, or LA County for that matter. We owe it to our children to remain focused on what makes sense for Glendora specifically. And we must stay true to the level of excellence and basic decency that we have historically demanded of each other. Bullying our new superintendent and school board during a pandemic is a colossal waste of valuable time, not to mention it's just mean and beneath us. Let's do better. This is from Andrew Bone. Dear Dr. DeLeon, with Thanksgiving still very fresh in the memory, we just wanted to say thank you for your leadership in Glendora. We have sadly learned of the unjustified efforts to recall you, and yet hope that, despite that, you focus on the fact that the majority of people have your back. If there's anything we can do to lend support, then please do not hesitate to ask. We have 2 children in GUSD, one a sophomore in Glendora High and another 5th grader at La Fetra, the latter who is benefiting from the amazing tutelage of Miss Haney. Despite the need for distance learning, our children continue to thrive, a testament to both the high caliber and commitment of the dedicated teachers in Glendora and the strategic leadership provided by yourself and your colleagues at GUSD. We realize that this is a highly challenging time. At the end of the day, we are all united in our ultimate desire to see our children safely back at school. And yet, while things remain as complex as they are, we remain thankful for the way you and your team continue to efficiently navigate this challenging environment. In short, thank you, and know that we are grateful. This comment is from Jennifer True. All of us should be saddened by the animus that has not only profoundly divided our country, but now has invaded our own community. Why are there signs for a recall? What is causing this profound hatred? Everyone wants COVID-19 gone. Everyone wants students, especially the students, want to be back in school. We all want our lives back, but blaming and pointing at the school board and the superintendent of schools is not the solution. The decision is made solely by the state of California and County of Los Angeles. Directing time, energy, and opinions to the LA County Board of Supervisors is a much better investment in your time than dividing a community. The Glendora School Board deserves our kudos and thanks for being productive and forward with their efforts to return kids to the classroom. The district has worked diligently on school waivers. None of the school districts around us, Bonita, Charter Oak, Claremont, and Covina Valley, have even applied for the 2K waiver, nor are they preparing to apply. None of the districts have brought back as many students as Glendora has managed to return under the exemption of special ed, English learners, sports, and the arts. Mr. Ellenson has worked closely with the LA County Board of Supervisors, obtaining a waiver to begin classes on January 4th. The loud voices and signs say we support our teachers. Do these voices support our teachers even if the teachers do not feel safe in the classroom? I would also like to address the dislike of Superintendent DeLeon. I will admit that Ms. DeLeon was not my choice for superintendent,
but the use of this lawsuit information is underhanded and a bit sleazy. Dr. DeLeon has been dismissed from this case, and even if she had not been excluded, a lawsuit is not proof of misconduct. If there are credible accusations of wrongdoing, those accusations have not been presented. In closing, I want to express my support for Mr. Ellenson. I have worked with him for many years and have found him a man of integrity and character. Mr. Ellenson is not the enemy. He has gone to great lengths to interview and understand staff, faculty, and parents' positions. The pathway back to providing in-person schooling while caring for the needs of employees, parents, and especially students is arduous at best. The board would benefit from support and gratitude rather than open and additional battleground. This comment is from Kimberly Bryan. These past few months, my 1,250 square foot home has transformed into a home office, a rehab facility, 3 classrooms, and a daycare. On top of everything 2020 has to offer, our family has been hit hard with our own unique blend of stressful situations. We did not know what to expect with distance learning this year, and we have been so pleased with our experiences. It all starts with the great communication from the leadership of Dr. DeLeon. Without a doubt, I always feel well informed, and when questions arise from other parents, I can just open up an email and have the answer. I am so grateful that she has been clear and concise with all communication. I have an 8th grader, a 2nd grader, and a new kindergarten student this year. Both Dr. Prince and Mr. Bishop have been outstanding in providing school-specific updates from day one. I would like to specifically thank Mrs. Holmes and Mrs. Tamburello at Goddard for being able to recognize abnormalities in schoolwork with my one student in the vast sea of Zoom faces they see every day. It means so much to me that they are so thoughtful and observant even in this different model of teaching. I would also like to thank and give a huge shout out to Mrs. Green at Sellers for not only needing to adapt her own teaching style into distance learning model, but also had the adaptability of being a master teacher to her student teacher. That was an incredible feat, and she did it with such grace. Finally, I would like to thank Mrs. Rice and Mrs. Milano at Sellers for being so amazing at team teaching kindergarten over Zoom. I can't even start to imagine how tough that has to be, but they make it seem so effortless every day, and my little girl is learning to read. The best part is that my kids are learning. I can see it from a new perspective every day as they log in from their workstations. Yes, there are rough days and tough lessons, but those have always been a part of learning, and I just haven't seen it firsthand because it was part of school that often stayed at school. And yes, there have been some things we have had to buy or new systems to create at home to accommodate the distance learning model, but having the kids at home has also been a unique blessing. One last shout of praise for our awesome PTA programs at both Sellers and Goddard for thinking outside the box to keep things fun for the kids. Thank you for this time to speak from my heart. This comment is from Brian Usetti, Glendora School Board. My name is Brian Usetti. I'm a father of 2 students at Sellers Elementary and 1 future Viking. To say that this school year has been difficult would be an understatement. There has been mixed emotions, ups and downs, chaos in the home, and home internet problems, and an added stress of 2 working parents. I know that all of you are aware of struggles. Many of you are parents dealing with the same issues and the added responsibility of the school board. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you. I know the situation is less than ideal. However, you continue to work for our children's benefit, ensuring that we adapt to the circumstances. Thank you. I know you don't write the return to school orders, you follow them. And I appreciate you taking roles seriously, whether you agreed with them or not, so thank you. To the superintendent who has started during an unprecedented year with never-ending challenges, thank you. Thank you to all of the administration and staff who have had to adapt to a new way of schooling in such a short period of time. And finally, I want to thank the teachers, many of whom have children at home learning while they teach our children. I know that you all miss and would rather have in-person classes. I would too. But you have made our kids feel engaged and part of your class, and you have risen to a challenge that is unlike any other. Thank you. I hope this year will soon be behind us and we can again focus on in-person learning and normal futures. The last comment is from Erin Weaver. Hello, I'm a concerned parent of 2 students who I elected to remove from the district during the pandemic to traditionally homeschool. When I heard you decided to use Canvas, I knew because I use it as a faculty member at APU that this was going to be an absolute dumpster fire, and this decision sealed the deal for me to take matters into my own hands. I have been following closely as the district plans for an eventual reopening. I watched the frustration of the community comments, and now teachers reach an all-time high at this last board meeting. I have a few recommendations as you consider hybrid learning for the spring before it is too late and teachers are let off a new cliff unprepared. Teaching in modalities like distance learning and hybrid learning require 2 forms of support in order for teachers to truly grasp the task at hand. Number 1, instructional designers. A team of support called instructional designers are necessary ASAP to help teachers structure hybrid and remote learning Canvas classrooms. Canvas is cumbersome. When a team of designers comes in to design templates that streamline the course creation process, you cut down the amount of hours for all teachers spent building the actual course. It is no secret that teachers are working overtime to create interactive content. However, there are ways for instructional designers to help teachers build out structures in advance. Not only does this provide a standardized experience for parents of multiple students across a variety of grade levels, but it sets the tone for the academic experience of the student, and again, saves time. Pre-designed templates by grade level working with the needs of the teachers can be imported from Commons to allow teachers to have modules and weekly assignments already set so they can go week by week and just fill in their work. By working with instructional designers, teachers can plan out the curriculum in a larger document, and then the instructional designer actually goes into Canvas and builds the course for them. This is what we do at APU for online courses. We provide the content and we work with the designer to build out the course week by week. They build it. Teachers have enough to do just putting the content into the form. Working now towards assisting elementary teachers would be optimal if they could feel prepared to have the entire semester planned out instead of living week to week for the spring semester. Number 2, training on hybrid and distance learning modalities to match student grade level and accommodations. Training for hybrid and distance learning would allow teachers to flip their classrooms, start making videos in advance, move towards project-based instruction, learn new ways to scaffold and to set appropriate expectations of what is possible and how to adjust their teaching styles and strategies. There's always going to be a fear of the unknown. Show the teachers demonstration videos of how this is working. Many states have been doing hybrid since the beginning of the year. There will be a path forward if you show them how it is working. Reach out to those schools, get their videos that show how and what they are doing. Work with teachers and ask them their thoughts on what the video content demonstrates in terms of casting a vision. I don't understand this lack of information or collaboration between districts. Get help. Elementary school math example, that's something she has a link she's put in. Lastly, I just wanted to say that I cannot wait to send my kids back to Cullen Elementary when there is a full return to learning without masks. I admire and appreciate the magnitude of responsibilities that are resting on the shoulders of those in leadership for GUSD. I appreciate you and hope that the spring semester brings some necessary relief for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wells. You too need a moment of peace and quiet. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We're going to move on now to our discussion and action items. Number one is select a representative to the Los Angeles County Committee on School District Organization. Our current representative is Mr. Ellenson. Is there a volunteer or a nomination for someone to take this on?
What does it entail?
I move that Mrs. Reuter be appointed for the ensuing year. Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Ellenson and seconded by Dr. Fernando that Mrs. Reuter take on this responsibility. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mrs. Reuter.
I'm gonna sign you up for all the rest of them. All of them.
The second representative here is to the Los Angeles County School Trustees Association to serve from January through December of 2021. Our current representative is Dr. Fernando. Is there a motion or a volunteer?
Dr. Fernando, what did you do as a school trustee association member?
I responded to emails.
Would you like to keep doing that?
Sure.
I make a motion to have Dr. Fernando do the Los Angeles County School Trustees Association.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't go back over that. I will be better the next time. Approve the selection of Board of Trustees commitment assignments for 2020, committee assignments for 2021. We have GEF, GUSD PTA Council, Coordinated School Health Committee, Chamber of Commerce Legislative Action, Glendora Coordinating Council, and the LCAP Stakeholder Committee. I was actually on the Glendora Educational Foundation last year. Does somebody else want to turn? I've done it for 2 years. Oh.
I'll do it.
Oh, okay, Rob. Thank you, Mrs. Merkley.
That's a good idea.
You'll enjoy it, I think. GUSD PTA Council. Is there somebody else that would like to do that?
I've never done it. I think it's the only one I haven't done, so if no one else, I'd be happy to volunteer for that.
You'll enjoy that too, Mr. Ellenson. Coordinated School Health Committee.
Robin, you've done that for.
That was, yeah, Robin. What's your responsibility there?
Probably 3 or 4 times a year, I get to go to lunch and talk and coordinate health things.
I'm happy to volunteer for that.
Okay. Chamber of Commerce Legislative Action.
I really like that one. I really do. If nobody else wants it, I'm happy to keep doing it.
So moved.
I really do like that.
Glendora Coordinating Council.
I'm on the council, so I can just stay. If somebody else wants to be the rep, you can, but I have to be there anyway.
LCAP Stakeholder Committee.
No.
Oh,
this is
sorry.
Community Coordinating Council.
Is that because you're a library? Is that
No.
You're just a member of that council.
Yes, I am in charge of the holiday baskets with, co-chair, and I'm in charge of youth recognition awards, so I have positions on it.
The LCAP Stakeholder Committee, it is Dr. Fernando and Mrs. Merkley, and I'm happy to volunteer for that one. Okay, let me just read these down and then I guess we need a motion first. To accept the names of Robin Merkley for GEF, for PTA Council, Mr. Ellenson, for Coordinated School Health Committee, Mrs. Reuter, for the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Action, Mrs. Reuter, Glendora Coordinating Council, Mrs. Merkley, and LCAP Stakeholder Committee, Ms. Borg. Do I have a motion to accept?
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Reuter and seconded by Dr. Fernando. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 5-0. The next one is approve the district representative to the East San Gabriel Valley Regional Occupation Program, and it's currently Mr. Ellenson.
Mr. Ellenson, do you want to keep doing that?
I would like to, yes.
Okay. I move that Mr. Ellenson is our district representative for the East Main Gradual Valley ROP program.
It has been moved by Mrs. Reuter that Mr. Ellenson continue as the representative, seconded by Mrs. Merkley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you, Corey. Mr. Ellenson.
A point of clarification on the discussion action item, Covina Valley is no longer a member of the East St. Gabriel Valley ROP, so just update the action item. So it's a small minor point.
Okay, I also need a motion to approve the board meeting calendar for January through December 2021 as presented.
So moved. Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Merkley, seconded by Mrs. Reuter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Another motion, sorry, we got 4 or 5 more of these to do. Another motion to approve resolution number 4 for sufficient textbook and instructional materials.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, Dr. Kelson, did you want to say something? I'm sorry. Dr. Kelson.
Well, we have to have a motion first.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening again, everyone, and thank you very much. By Ed Code Section 60119 and Senate Bill 550, known as the Williams Act, I am required to let you know that the district has sufficient textbooks and instructional materials for student use. Thank you for considering this request.
Thank you, Ms. Dr. Kelson. All those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you, Dr. Kelson. It's carried 5-0. I need another motion to approve the 2020-21 first interim report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Weinstein, Mr. Weinstein, would you like to?
No doctor yet. Sorry.
You tell me.
Bring up the PowerPoint, please. No, I can see it there. There you go.
You see?
You can go to the next slide. So our financial reporting starts with our adopted budget on June 30th. The board gets an adopted budget. Unfortunately, in the adopted budget, as many of you know, the governor's revised budget doesn't hit us till July. So what we're really doing in the adopted budget is we're looking at the January governor's budget and then looking at the May revise and really not having all the information, but making our best guess moving forward of what our adopted budget should be. Happy to announce that the adopted budget actually was very well done by my predecessor, Mark, and Jeanette, the Director of Fiscal Services. They did a real good job with the amount of information they had at the time. A couple of the things that happened in our July revise was 2 things. We were given one-time money in COVID funds. For us, it was $4.9 million in one-time money to help us with the COVID fund expenditures, and that will be reflected in our first interim because now we have that information. But the second piece of information we got was based on projected tax revenue, the state felt that they were going to be short in cash. So one of the things that they did was they asked districts, LA County, as well as the state asked districts to review all their cash management and decide whether or not they can make it through the year without borrowing funds. LA County, we are on in one of the next resolutions you will do, will be giving us permission to borrow through, it's called a tax revenue anticipation note, which is a trans to make sure that if those deferments of our cash payments that we are getting from the state are delayed, we will also be able to borrow money to make sure we make payroll and other things. One of the things that we have to realize, though, is that with that comes fees and finance charges whenever we do a tax anticipation note. So as we went into the first budget assumptions, and first budget is actually as of October 31st. So we end our first interim October 31st. All transactions since July 1st to October 31st are reflected in first interim. Our next ability to make adjustments will be throughout December and January to January 31st, and January 31st is our second interim. So what normally happens is we have this first interim, which gives us our additional information. We start seeing how we're spending money from August, September, October. We take a look at our first interim, and then before our second interim, we make budget adjustments, budget cuts, budget action plans. We bring them to the board, and that'll be reflected in our second interim. So some of the things that we took into consideration in our first interim budget assumptions, we always take a very general conservative approach. It's better to be very conservative and then bring you good news than be overly optimistic and then have to bring you bad news, right? We always want to be the heroes here. We don't want to take that away. And again, the trans funding cost was included. Our ADA status quo is at 6905. Now, this is something that is sometimes a little bit difficult to understand. We're in declining enrollment, and I know you've all talked about that and brought it to the staff as well as the community's attention. But when you're on declining enrollment, there's a CDE regulation that says you can go by last year's ADA to kind of offset the mitigation of a slope of a downward, ADA or enrollment. So we did that before COVID-19. So now we're in COVID, and they put in another waiver and said, you know what, you can actually take last year's ADA anyway. So actually, the ADA we're being funded on for this year is actually 2018-19's ADA. So we're actually 2 years behind now in our slope of declining enrollment, which means as we look at our multi-year projections moving forward, for next year, when those waivers go away, we'll have to take into consideration 2 years worth of declining enrollment in the first hit, and then go back to the 1 year declining enrollment. So that's reflective in our multi-year projections, which you'll see in a little while. Again, the COVID funds was $4.9 million, and this added to our income, but also added to our expenditures because it has to be expended. December 31st is one area it has to be expended by, and then June 30th another. So we have to expend that money. If we don't expend the money, we lose the money. So the idea is, although we do have this increased one-time money income, one-time expenditures are also increased. And then we have adjusted all of our budget to our actual health and welfare benefits. We have all that new information. We know what those costs are, and that's been adjusted in our budget. And we've also carried over all our restricted funding. Some of our restricted funding or Title I funds can actually go through September 30th rather than be expended by June 30th. So some of the numbers you'll see in our first interim also include spending from last year's basic carryover of our restricted funding. Next slide, thank you. So here's our revenue summary, and it gives us our adopted budget and then the changes to first interim. So you can see that Mark and Jeanette did an incredible job in estimating what our actual income will be from our LCFF calculator. We only have a difference of $115,000, and that's really, when you think about you're getting somewhere around $9,000 a student in this district. We're really not talking about a lot of students. They were only off about 10 students. So that was very good estimation. Our federal revenue is enhanced by $4 million, and that's your COVID funds. About $3.6 million came from the federal government. And then our other state revenue was also enhanced, $550,000. And then our local revenue, actually, when we did our taxation of our local revenue, which is our delinquent taxes and some of the other local sales taxes that we get for our local revenue, that actually we're seeing a decrease this year. So all in all, we have an increase of $4.5 to $4.6 million in our revenue, but that's mostly from our COVID-19 funds. Any questions on revenue as I kind of go through these scales? I know I'm moving fast, it's consolidated, and trying to catch you while you're still fresh and not too tired. Once you hit 10 o'clock, numbers start looking kind of messy. So go to the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Expenditure summary. You're right on it, Will. Thank you. So expenditure summary, and you can see that on our estimation as we go in, you can see the top three categories is 85% of our entire budget, right? So our total compensation, which is classified salaries, certificated salaries, and benefits, compensate about 85% of our entire budget on a regular school year. And so looking at the adopted budget, and we kind of go into the adopted budget, throwing those projections out there, Mark and Jeanette did an unbelievable job. You can take a look. They were almost right on in all of those categories. And on the employee benefits, one of the things that you have to realize in the employee benefits, they don't have the final costs of what our Blue Cross, our Anthem. We didn't really know what our CalSTRS and PERS was going to be. That was also offset. Some COVID regulations changed that for this year. So when you really look at their estimates, they did a wonderful job. They were only off, about $80,000. And if you really take in the scope of the millions of dollars that they were projecting, they did an outstanding job. So then books and supplies, you can see that we're estimating an increase in about $3.75 million, but that's COVID spending, right? Supplies, COVID spending. And then our services and other operating is also about $350,000 to $400,000. We're expecting it to increase. That's also COVID spending. And our capital outlay is the same. And other outgoing is changed a little bit. And other outgoing really has to do with what we pay into the county for their county services. So some of the things that we're not really taking benefit of from the county and our SELPAs and also our other JPAs, we're still paying in. And unfortunately, those costs are continuing going up each year. So overall, our total expenditures, we're up about $4,333,000. Again, when you look at that, it's really mostly just COVID spending. So when you look at the overall projections from our adopted budget, I have to say that the staff did an incredible job. They really did. And it's always great coming in as a new CBO when you look at those estimates and you say, wow, they were right on. You know, I can't complain. So next slide. Thanks. So fund ending balance. So what does this really mean to us? So when the adopted budget was first adopted, they gave you an estimate $300,000 loss for the year. So after that $300,000 loss, you also approved a one-time payout of 0.5% to the employees, which also is about another $250,000 to $300,000. So, but that was after the adopted budget. So really, once you add that in, you could have had a $600,000 loss, but with some positive revenue adjustments and really taking a look at the budget and doing some proactive cutting, we have that down to about an estimated $43,000 for the entire year. So when you really look at between adopted budget and first revenue, with all those changes, we're actually ahead of the game coming in, right? So again, staff doing an outstanding job of that as we kind of move forward. So that's a benefit of about $250,000. We're doing better. Now, although $43,000 is not good, when we look at the overall scope, it's actually very close. It's almost a balanced budget. But in philosophy, when you start turning in your multi-year projections, one of the red flags that FCMAT has is you never really want to turn in projections with 3 years of negative income. And you'll see, even though the 43 is so small in the scope of things, it's still negative income. So what we've done is with the first interim, we've put together an action plan for cost cutting before the second interim so that when we turn these into the LA County, they actually see that our anticipation by second interim is we'll be back positive in our first year. So when you look at the scope of things, we take a look at our impact to our bottom line here. So we're still over $12 million to our reserves. And that's about a 15% reserve. Now, although 15% sounds really good, if you look at the common messages that we get from our counties, Ventura County, LA County, FCMAT, which is our overall scope of how a district's doing, and they really do the judge, they're recommending 17%. So we are almost there. So you can see in overall how we break down our economic reserves. So economic reserves for uncertainties is 3%. That's 3% of our expenses. So that is about $2.3 million. Cash and revolving funds and stores is really just our revolving accounts. And then there's 3 areas that we look at for our reserves. One is restricted, which means those monies are actually restricted in how we spend them. 2 is assigned, which means that we already have pre-assigned how we're going to spend that money if we have to. And then unassigned, which basically means that it's up to the board and the district to spend the money any way we can. Any way we can, excuse me. So the difference really is that the board really needs to understand is that the difference between assigned and restricted is assigned, you can change your mind anytime, because it's not legally restricted money. It's just saying, hey, we may want to buy some school buses, or we may want to spend the money over here, and that's kind of what we put this money aside for. We can change our mind on how we spend it. Unfortunately, restricted reserves is like categorical funds. Once it's restricted, it's always restricted. Any questions on that slide? No? We're good? Great. Next slide. Thank you. So here's what we're turning into the current expenses cutting measures to balance the budget. So this will be turned in with our first interim. We've identified some costs that we're going to be cutting. So a 5% reduction in district office department budgets, which is about $28,000. Remember, it's half a year because we only have half a year left. About $28,000. We're going to do that by really overall, we're going to have our ordering stop February 15th for this year. So we need to get our supplies early. If you haven't ordered your supplies by now, we're going to figure out a way to get you your supplies. We're not going to leave anybody in the hole. But if you don't have the supplies by March, you're not going to be using it this year anyway. You don't need to order it. So 10% reduction of general fund supply budget overall, and a reduction in our consulting services. And this really has to do with another consent item that is future. We're cutting in half our Red Hawk, which is our communications. Once we end that, it's a $76,000 expense each year, half of it, half a year, $38,000. And reduction of overtime and extra hours, about $24,000 we believe we'll be able to reduce. So total fiscal actions about $200,000, which looks like a projected ending balance after actions. Instead of a negative 43, we expect to be about a little over $150,000 in the positive. Any questions on those? All of these expenses, the rule of all expense cutting is whatever you do, don't affect the educational process, right? So the idea is we look for fat, we look for efficiencies, we look for areas, we look at our stores of what we have in our warehouse, use up those stores first. Don't go buying stuff you don't need. It's kind of the old thing, do you want it or do you need it? We stick with what we need when we need to cut budgets, and make sure you don't affect students or the educational process or the support of teachers. And that's how we kind of move forward with these. Next slide. So then we get into our multi-year projections. So the multi-year projection is the current year and 2 out years. And so what we did, again, took a conservative approach. Our enrollment projection loss of 3.3% per year, which is 225 students. ADA projected on that enrollment is 96.5% of enrollment is our ADA projections. Our unduplicated pupil percentage moving forward is at 31.5. We hope that will go up. However, that has been our historic, so we're going to use that moving forward. Staffing reductions are only through attrition. There's no staff cuts planned moving forward in these multi-year assumptions. No cost-cutting action plan has been in place, but we will be coming to you by second interim with an action plan for our future out years, some ideas that we have that can save us some money. And our COLA is 0 in 2021, 22, and 22, 23, which means no cost of living increase given to us by the state. And also no one-time funding is estimated for those 2 years, which means all the COVID one-time fund money go away, and we're not expecting any additional one-time funding money at this particular time. And that's our most conservative approach. Next slide. So our multi-year projections as they stand currently, without any cost-cutting plans moving forward, is in our 21-22 year, we're showing a loss of $1.7 million, and 22-23 a loss of $1.55 million. And this is based on the idea of decreasing enrollment and then really not having additional cost cutting to meet those decrease in enrollment. The good news is, though, no reason to panic. We do have to put these cost cutting in place. We do have to look for more efficiencies, and we do have to look at how we can be better at what we do. But overall, you can see on the bottom line there, the reserve for economic uncertainties is 3%. We continually meet that all the way through the year 2023 with a ending balance of about $8.8 million in that year. Is significantly less than the $12 million we currently have. But again, we're still afloat. We're still okay. And it gives us some cushion and room to know that we can make those cuts and adjustments as we go in our future years, not affect the educational process or do anything drastic that'll affect the students' education, the quality of their education, or their experience as one of our students. But it gives us time. And I think it's important when we look at this to thank those before us, right? To recognize that those people who ran the district before I got here built a reserve of 15%. Was when you hit these hard times, that reserve of 15% is what saves us moving forward. Saves us from making those drastic, decisions that puts everybody in a panic. We don't have to do that because the people before us were fiscally responsible, gave us the reserves of 15%, which gives us the cushion to take our time, make the adjustments we have to do to meet our future needs as we move forward. And I think that's a great lesson as we make those cuts and move forward, because this isn't the first hardship we're going to go through. COVID was terrible, but as we move forward 3, 4, 5 years from now, there's something else. There's always something else, right? So it just shows the importance of reserves as we kind of move forward. And then, so, the general fund is what we always talk about. The general fund is what we always concentrate on, but there's more than just the general fund in a school district. So what I've done here is I put a kind of a summary of all our other funds. We have our adult education fund, which has a beginning balance currently of $808,000. We expect to have an increase of about $10,000 at the end of the year there. Adult education is funded through federal grants, right? So it's not affecting our general fund. Cafeteria fund is our Fund 13. Fund 13 is completely outside of our general fund. It's all our nutrition services and food services. One of the things that's benefiting the cafeteria fund is that some of our COVID-19 money is supporting that because it's an essential service during this time, and we do feed the community. And I have to say, Stacy and her staff are amazing. I've been out there with them, when they're doing they're outside giving out the bags of food. They're also planning on being here during the holidays to make sure that there's food during the holidays, and this is just something that's really, I believe they asked me for something like 156 man hours so they could get all that food out to the community during the next couple of weeks. And of course we approved it, and it's just something that we're really proud that they're doing. Deferred maintenance is money set aside for future maintenance. So it's really not, so for instance, a great example would be HVAC, right? So although you have HVAC units and you're changing the filters, which is current maintenance that we do, we also know that as things age, more maintenances, condensers go out, motors go out, fans go out. Deferred maintenance is for those type of bigger items that happen in the future with our mechanical things in buildings. Developer fees are the fees that developers pay when they want to build things, and also private citizens when they're adding on to their home. And those are fees that we get. We're expecting to use a little bit more than what we spend, but we have a nice balance of over $3 million in those funds. Developer fees can only be used for expenses that are done for increasing our student load. So things that increase our student load, you build a new home development, you're bringing in new students, we use those funds to make sure those students have a place to have an education. Bond facility matching funds. So when you did have a bond out there, you got matching funds from the state. And so matching funds do not need a bond committee. Matching funds are basically construction funds or facility funds that are for the use of the board. We can see that we have a nice healthy balance there too, ending at about $2.5 million. Tax override fund, Fund 53, that is really just a pass-through fund from the county. They use our accounts to pass through funds to pay school bonds off. And then our daycare and preschool, which I just had a meeting with today, so got to know about our preschool and our daycare, and they're doing very well. We also are using some COVID funds to support them during this pandemic, and we're trying to get them to balance, but there's only a loss of about $40,000 there in that fund, and they do have a healthy reserve to balance that. Any questions on any of our other funds or how they're used or anything like that? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little concerned about our deferred maintenance fund. Can you talk to me about?
So deferred maintenance over the last few years, a percentage of our income goes into deferred maintenance every year. Because of the pandemic and because of the downslide since 2010, deferred maintenance has not been something that we have to put money into. So this district suspended its deferred maintenance a couple of years ago, deposit. So we have been using that money for maintenance of our buildings. I haven't done any type of detailed analysis of exactly what it's been expended on, but our maintenance as well as deferred maintenance, I mean, it doesn't look to be out of sorts. There's been no audit findings on our deferred maintenance, so obviously they're using it correctly. But we are getting low, and I think that once we're kind of past this, we are going to have to start depositing money back into that account.
Because the maintenance isn't going away. In fact, the need for facilities
Schools get older.
Yeah.
It gets larger.
So
yeah.
what you're suggesting is that we're going to need to start
Yeah,
depositing money back, making contributions.
And I
to
think
that
that's
account.
when I bring back the budget for next year, when I bring in the adopted budget from next year, deposits to the deferred maintenance accounts will be in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment that I'm just really impressed that the cafeteria is doing so well, because we've really struggled with that with, we've had people who got lunches and didn't pay, and we were like $36,000 in the hole from that. And here we go, no one's buying, but we're still doing well. I know it's from COVID, but
Yeah,
it's a
well,
good
one of the positives from COVID, I think the federal government finally has admitted, which they've been very, very, I've been on a couple of lobbying committees, finally admitted that the need that that the federal government needs to use schools to feed kids. Like families in need, this is their channel of getting food to kids, right? So, and families in need. One of the things that they've always fought is universal feeding across the board in the United States through schools. But our summer feeding program, which is extended through COVID waivers throughout the entire year, allows us to do just that. So whatever we've been feeding, we're getting reimbursed from. And so nobody has to pay. It's all universal food right now. So that really helps offset that. And I think there's something to be said for that as we, just in general, as we move forward in our community, that we all know families in need and we all want to make sure we support them at all times. No kid should be hungry.
May I? Of course. Thank you, Mr. Weinstein. I appreciate the presentation and being able to present that much information that quickly. I kept up with you, but I've got notes.
No worries.
Beautiful mind, if it's not beautiful. Can you talk a little bit more about the trans and what kind of cash deferrals we might expect? What extent of borrowing we're doing? If you want to talk generally high level.
Yeah, we'll talk general about it. We're hoping, because the tax revenues have been very positive. So what ended up happening was in January, they came out with the governor's budget and gave us an anticipated tax revenue. In the May revise, they said that's in jeopardy. And in the July revise, the final revise, they said that there could be anywhere from 120 to 180 days of deferring how much when you get paid. So throughout the year, we get paid 5 times. There are different increments as we get paid. And so if we are behind 180 days in each of those payments, a lot of the funds that we get this year will not actually be funded to us till next year, actual school year. So we are talking with a $7 million budget. We could be talking anywhere up to $30 million.
But there's a possibility that might not be.
There's a possibility that might not happen. And we will know that in January when the governor comes into next year's budget and also tells us what the tax revenues are. We have listened to a lot of the webinars from the state telling us that the actual anticipated tax revenue that came in actually exceeds what the governor said it would do in January. So we are hoping that that means no more deferrals. However, nobody has actually come out and said you're not going to have these deferrals. And one of the things I think that we all, anybody out there who's in accounting or taking accounting out there, these deferrals are not actually permitted by the general accepted accounting principles in the United States, but the state can use them to push expenses from this year into next year to save money for this year. And that's all it is. It's literally taking expenses from this year and pushing them into next year. And it's something that we really don't like to see them do because eventually it catches up with you. But what we're hoping is that they'll be able to catch up in all our deferments. And if we do need a trans, it'll be a very short period of time. And obviously when you borrow money, consolidated period of time means less fees as well as less interest for us.
Worst case scenario, when we have to secure a trans for $30 million or 40% of expenditures, what are the fees and interest that they pay?
You're looking at probably around $200,000 to $250,000 in interest. Fees is only going to be about $50,000 up front.
And that's worst case scenario.
That's worst case scenario, but it is $250,000. And the way I always look at it is $250,000 for that means $250,000 that I don't put into the classroom.
And they were deferred during the recession.
In 2007 through 2012, massive deferrals. Yeah.
Thank you. The ADA drop, I just want to highlight the significance of that. I mean, that's been a major hit on our budget every year, is the 1 to 200 student attendance drop that we're seeing every year. And so a 2-year drop is 2 times the hit that we're used to absorbing.
Yeah.
So that's significant. And I noticed that you're estimating 225 student decline per year. Hopefully that's too much.
Yes.
It's possible.
When I looked at your, I went historically, I looked at it and it's basically, it is a little higher than what we did. I added 10%. You're right in the high 100s, low 200s. I did 225 just to be conservative. One of the things we're going to look for is ways to up our ADA, which basically means up the percentage between enrollment and actually cheeks in the seats to get paid on that. So our ADA actually can go up even though enrollment is going down. And then the second thing that we have to kind of look at for that is every child is, the way I try to explain it to everybody is every child's about 10 grand, right? So when we have one child not show up or our AD goes down by one, our revenue goes down by $10,000. So 400 kids, $4 million. Yeah, and that's a lot of revenue that we have to find ways to save.
What I think you were mentioning just now is increasing attendance, but I mean our attendance rate's already like what,
96.5.
So that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, but your high school is not as great as we would like it to be. Yeah.
Okay.
And that has to do with engagement. That has to do with continuing what we're doing, our extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, engage our students, get them to come in, and really enforce with parents how important it is for them to actually be enrolled in attending.
And of the one-time COVID money, you indicated a total of $4.9 million. How much of that has been spent?
We have still around $700,000, but all the money that's supposed to be spent by December 31st, we have expended. So we still have plenty of room for teacher professional development, any type of supplies that we may need, as well as supporting other types of programs, mental health services and different things like that for kids, and our daycare system that some of our staff is also taking advantage of. So there's plenty.
We have enough.
Hmm?
We have enough.
We have enough, yeah.
Because I think that was my biggest concern in the beginning of COVID was the first grant that we were awarded was like $400,000.
Yeah.
And that was it at the time.
And you burned through that pretty quick.
Well, yeah, and that was, the concern was expenditures are just going to be through the roof for all of this one-time technology items and cleaning and maintenance and everything that we had to purchase. 4.9 is pretty good. I know, I think a lot of that is determined by the district's number of unduplicated pupils. Is that correct?
Part of it is. So our unduplicated count, or part of the LCF calculation, which is unduplicated, was used to divide up those funds.
So a district with a much higher number than 30% would be getting significantly more?
Would be getting more. I wouldn't say significantly, but definitely more. But every dollar counts, yeah.
I think my ultimate concern was that we had enough and have enough to.
Yeah, and I think that's also, have to thank Mark, have to thank Nancy, have to thank Jeanette for making sure that we got all our supplies. So I did a full review, and I believe I gave the board an update on it. I did a full review of all our PPE supplies. And for instance, a lot of my teachers have asked about, well, do you have enough masks? We come back and everything. We have 50,000 units of surgical masks. So I mean, we have enough. Kids mask, everything. They really made sure the warehouse is full, and we also have all cleaning supplies we need and everything like that. So really, those funds that are left can be used for the professional development. I'm not really worried about supplies. Whatever minor supplies we need, we'll have money for. So I think we're in a really good place, and that just goes to show that the staff was really thinking ahead about what we needed.
And the $600,000 or $700,000 of one-time COVID money that's still here, is that considered in the restricted or assigned?
Well, actually, that's restricted. So COVID money, you can consider it a categorical fund because it is so restricted on what you can and can't use it from. You might as well call it a categorical. So it is restricted, but it's not currently sitting in our reserves because we've already projected that we will spend it.
So it's not in any of the.
It's not in any of the reserves, right? It's actually in your expenditures already. The 2021
expenditures.
Right. Yeah. So we've already estimated that we're going to spend that money because if we don't spend it, we're going to lose it. So. We're good at spending money. We'll spend it. I'm sure we'll get it spent.
I don't want to be that good at it.
Yeah.
And you said TICMAT recommends 17%
Yeah.
reserve. Does that include restricted?
Yes, it includes everything. Overall, 17% reserves.
Deferred maintenance, picking up on what Mrs. Reuter said. Deferred maintenance and routine restricted maintenance I often get confused. Routine restricted maintenance is the requirement that we spend a certain percentage of
3%.
of our budget on maintenance every year, which we do.
Correct.
Separately from that, we've historically, it was a requirement to contribute a certain percentage into your deferred maintenance account.
Yeah, it's about a 0.5%.
That was removed. We continue to do it for some years, but we have stopped doing that.
Correct.
And if you could, after the meeting, send to the board, I request a summary of the expenditures in the deferred maintenance,
Sure.
developer fees fund, and bond facility matching fund.
Sure.
14, 25, and 35.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll give you a breakdown of those expenditures by category, and if there's any major large single expenditures, we'll break that out as an individual expenditure for you.
Thank you. And in the projected cuts for this school year, you had slotted $110,000 in supplies, and that just raised a concern that how can you cut supplies when you're in the COVID year?
These are supplies that we would use if students were on campus all year long. So we've already encumbered money for like cleaning supplies. So some of our cleaning supplies, although we spent COVID money on cleaning supplies for certain COVID cleaning, our actual cleaning that's going on in the classroom every day, since we don't actually have students in there, has been minimized. So we can actually cut back on that a little bit.
Okay. No COLA increases for the next couple of years, but STRS and PERS increases continue?
Yes. So we have a one-time relief, which is this year, on STRS and PERS, and we are going to see them go right back to where they were climbing every year to catch up on the great investment strategies that the state have for those monies.
This year, is it caught up next year, or did they just move everything out one year?
Actually, what they did was they took the amount of money that they will not get this, and they kind of put it at the end. So we're actually going back to last year's Cal PERS and Cal STRS. And then as it goes forward, they'll slowly increase and catch us up.
It'll just take one more year to achieve what is shown as the goal.
Right, to actually be liquid.
Okay.
So then I can retire.
The last question I had was about adult ed, but I think it's more appropriate a question for maybe Dr. Daly or Dr. Kelson about our adult ed program.
The actual program, educational program, yeah, that would go to Dr. Kelson or Dr. De Leon.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the board? Without any other questions, I would encourage the board to accept the first interim as presented.
Okay, I was going to ask if Dr. Fernando had any questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
He said no.
Okay,
Yeah.
I apologize, sir.
We
I thought
really lean on
I thought we went
Corey
around
for
that
this.
way, so I thought it was
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Weinstein.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that, may I have we've already had the motion, how about the vote? All in favor of accepting the first interim report, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. The next one is to approve the parent overview LCAP budget. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Reuter and seconded by Mrs. Merkley. Dr. Kelson and Dr. Summers, I think.
Yes, this was definitely a joint project. Thank you once again, trustees. As you are well aware, the state changed the requirements of the local control and accountability plan. As a result of the pandemic, it is called this year the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. We are reporting to you this evening that around $2.8 million of supplemental funds have been spent to mitigate learning loss, to reduce the digital divide, and to ensure that our students are safe while they are on our campuses. So if you were interested in reviewing the document that will be submitted to the state tomorrow morning, it is in front of you on the screen now. Otherwise, I am pleased to report that we are meeting the timelines and expectations held of us. Are there any questions?
Mrs. Merkley? No?
Do you anticipate that it will go back to the local control accountability plan once we're all back into school?
I do. In fact, tomorrow afternoon, the California Department of Education is holding the second of 2 webinars to get feedback from stakeholders in order to prepare the template for the next 3-year cycle. the State Board of Education will take a look at adopting the recommended ideas in a template available at the first of the year.
Dr. Fernando? Mr. Ellenson?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kelson. And I don't mean to put you on the spot with the adult ed question here, but whatever information you could share, and then if you wanted to follow up with us afterwards, it would be appreciated. But when I saw the adult ed fund, it reminded me of some of the work that we're doing at the East San Gabriel Valley ROP. Our former post-secondary adult ed program has been shut down for now while we focus on the high school programs and build them stronger. But I think the ultimate intention by Dr. Moravito is to ultimately be able to bring that back. So my question is, I was wondering, what do we do? How do we do adult ed? I know there's a block grant, and we applied in consortium with other entities, but is there a possibility that we could work with ROP in the future to have them do our adult ed, similar to the way that we have them do our career tech ed?
Thank you for asking that. The short, concise answer for now is there are tremendous opportunities available for youth-related programs. So if you think of adult education as serving not only students who are looking to complete a high school diploma, but a broader population that includes students, post-high school students looking to ages 18 to 24 who want to do those 1 year, 18-month certifications that are a part of career technical education. In my first weeks with this district, Mr. Letourneau, who sits on the Adult Education Consortium for the region, and Dr. Summers met with me and shared their ideas. Right now, we have the Mommy and Me program running as part of adult ed because it's so popular with the community. And I have a list of projects that Mr. Letourneau would like to look at. Certainly, as a part of that work, we can discuss long-range plans, not only with this body, but also with Dr. Moravito and her team, as I know is the history in this district.
Thank you, because I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I hope that there will be, and I know Dr. Moravito has indicated as such and has been successful, as the board heard recently, in winning grants for us in career tech ed. And having partner districts like the 6 of us that are in the ROP helps us to hit all of the metrics and all of the numbers and qualify for a lot of grants that we wouldn't otherwise qualify for. And the reforms that she's making to ed services, personnel, and business services are, and grants management in particular, I think are going to expand the ROP's ability to serve all of us by managing our grants for us, winning more of them and managing them for us. And the plans for adult ed, I think are going to be pretty good. And if I think the ROP board has the vision and the optimism that all 6 districts will come together, not just for the career tech ed grants, but for adult ed block grants, and that we can have career tech ed pathways that start in middle school or high school here and can continue on through ROP so that they can finish their certification programs and get credit for those adult ed programs even when they're in high school if they wanted to. A little bit more seamless and a little bit more put together. So that's just my input for you on that piece that the ROP is doing, but thank you and Dr. Summers and Mr. Letourneau for already being on top of that.
Thank you. May I also say, as part of a powerful future for every GUSD child, that our partners at Citrus College have also been a part of that conversation, both with ROP and with us. So lots of promising things to continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We already have a motion. All those in favor of approving this, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kelson, Doctors Kelson and Summers. Thank you.
Don't go too far. I need a motion to approve resolution number 6, authorizing the borrowing of funds for fiscal year 2020-2021 and the issuance and sale of a 2020-21 tax and revenue anticipation note as presented. Okay, Dr. Kelson.
Is this Mr. Weinstein?
I thought I had Dr. Kelson on.
Another one coming up.
Okay, because we were supposed to all have them together, so.
Come on, you can talk about the tax.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Kelson?
So the resolution before us just gives the administration permission to ask to be on the list for the trans, and then to give in the cash flow. We work directly with the county to come up with the dollar amount, and we would bring that dollar amount back to the board along with the finance costs and the actual interest rate at a later date to give you the information. This is just giving us the authority to actually go out and get the trans if needed.
Any questions, board members? No? Okay, it's been moved by Robin and seconded, and I'm sorry, did you second it? Seconded by Mr. Ellenson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, 5-0. Okay, the last one, I think. Yes, I need a motion to approve the appointment of Dr. Edward Potter as the representative to the Personnel Commission.
So moved.
My pleasure to second.
Dr. Grazia.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to bring forward Dr. Potter for his 4th full term to the Personnel Commission. He served us very ably and successfully for many, many years. He's a stalwart in the community and supporter of the Commission's rules and regulations. So thank you very much. We thank him for his service.
Absolutely. Any questions by the board members?
Just one comment.
Yes, Corey.
Want to thank Dr. Grazia. Please pass, in case he isn't up at 10:23 p.m. watching a board meeting, which I hope he isn't, but please express our gratitude for him continuing to serve in that position. I sincerely appreciate it. I trust him implicitly to be the board's appointee there, and he's been serving long before anyone sitting up here has been serving in any of our positions, so appreciate it.
Okay, has been moved by Mr. Ellenson and seconded by Mrs. Reuter. All those in favor of appointing Dr. Edward Potter as the representative to the Personnel Commission say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, consent items. The Board of Education may consider agenda items as a whole or as individual divisions. Any item may be removed by a board member of the board for discussion. Does anyone wish to remove any item? Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll make a motion to approve all consent items, a blanket motion for all consent items.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Comments from members of the board. It's really here. Mrs. Merkley.
Just have a couple of things. I visited a couple of classrooms. I visited, obviously it's virtual, the TK class today. And oh my gosh, I've had SANTA, Santa was his name, going through my head all day. It was really cute. I just was so impressed with how much they get done, but how hard it is. I just don't envy them at all. Last week, I think it was just last week, I attended the California School Boards Association once again. I was sitting in my room, which was kind of nice. But I'm on a representative, the board representative to the VAPA Visual Performing Arts Committee. And so I attended Innovation of the Arts put on by San Gabriel Unified. It was just so amazing to see the things. They have a school that is kind of dedicated. They have music every time. I think they start with mariachi. They have, dancing and all of the arts. And it was so impressive. I'm trying to remember the exact data, but like the English language arts, their scores went up 33%. Math scores went up 20%. And their discipline problems went down over 70%. I mean, just so impressive. And so Dr. Summers and Becky Valbuena wrote a grant. And so we have, I can't remember what the name of it is. The Los Angeles Arts Collective, Education Collective. And so we have been meeting. We met once in the spring, and then we've met 2 or 3 times virtually. And we'll be presenting, I think, at our January board meeting. But I am just so excited about the things that arts can do. And I look forward to to really improving it here. You know, like we have music in the elementary schools. How cool would it be to have an art teacher, certificated art teacher who could rotate between the elementary schools? And anyway, I'm just really excited about it and will be a big advocate and look forward to it. So I have to say that it was very nice tonight to have some nice comments. Thank you for being nice. We appreciate that. And Merry Christmas.
Dr. Fernando.
First of all, I want to thank Mrs. Reuter for her excellent leadership of the board during a very difficult time. I think the way that you navigated as president of the board is to be commended, and I know that many people in the community appreciated your leadership. I think many of our students learned about leadership from you in the ways that you handled some of these very difficult board meetings that we've been experiencing over the last couple of weeks, so my thanks to you. I also want to specifically mention Mr. Ellenson and the work that he has done in the community despite the vitriol that he has experienced and the integrity and the class by which you have engaged in the community. The way that I think our board as a whole has engaged our teachers, I think has been one of the highlights of me working with this group of people. And I have received a lot of feedback from community members, but also teachers, that the comments that we have made at board meetings have made a significant difference. And they have seen the way that we have engaged, even the fact when people have acted unprofessionally towards us, that we have not responded in kind. I also want to just continue my support of Dr. De Leon. Thank you for your continued great work. It is encouraging to see the positive feedback that you're receiving. And I also want to appreciate the team that's here at 10:28. Great work, team. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Mr. Weinstein, it's great that you're here with us and you're going to be able to take us to a new level in terms of how we engage our financial strategy. And finally, I want to thank our teachers who have been going through a very rough fall, but have stayed committed, have stayed engaged. I know this is finals week. I know that engaging students online at all levels is difficult. I know we say that it's easier at the high school, but still it's difficult at the high school level. And so for those teachers that are going to be listening to this right now or in the future, please know that we are deeply in gratitude of the work that you're doing, and also want to just wish everybody a happy holiday season and that you may find deep rest during these difficult times. Thanks.
Mrs. Reuter.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments, Dr. Fernando. I really appreciate it. And I do want to say it has been my honor and privilege to serve as the board president for 2020. It has been a challenging year, and I have learned a lot, and I've made some mistakes, and I've appreciated the personal and professional growth from this past year. I've appreciated working with all four of you on the board and the support that we've had for each other, trying to figure out how to navigate both the exciting times of bringing a new superintendent into this district and the challenging times of figuring out how to best serve our students and teachers and families when the schools are shut down and learning is being done remotely. So I think we make a really great team. I think we all bring different skill sets to the table, and it's a pleasure to work with all of you. And I look forward to supporting President Borg in 2021. I would just echo the sentiments of thanks to our teachers and to our families for continuing to support and for continuing to figure out ways to make this situation work. We are all looking forward to whatever the new normal is that hopefully is coming our way. But I do have a lot of appreciation for all the teachers, all the support staff, everyone that is doing everything they can to help our students out through this time. So thank you all. I hope you all do get some rest over the holiday break and look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you.
Mr. Ellenson.
Thank you. I want to echo what Dr. Fernandez said about Mrs. Ruder, and thank you for, I think it was the most difficult year to be a leader at any level, and to be our leader at this level during 2020. And you'll never forget, anytime anyone asks you, what year were you board president, it'll be very easy for you to remember 2020, but it was, honestly, it seemed like a full-time job from my perspective that you undertook to lead us through this and all of the difficult decisions that we've had to make. I appreciate you saying that you've made mistakes. I think it's important for us to all acknowledge that we've all made mistakes. We are all just doing the best that we can with the information that we have, listening to as many people as we can, reviewing the data, listening to the science, listening to the experts, also being in touch with the sentiments of our staff, our students, and our families and what they want, and trying to put all that together into something that makes sense today, because tomorrow may be different. And the rules may be different, and the circumstances may be different. I want to thank all the teachers and administrators that took the time to speak with me over this past month. It was a lot of time and effort, but it was very worth it for me to hear from so many classified staff, certificated staff, site administrators, and district administrators. I appreciate you trusting me and being honest with me about how this year has gone so far. I'm not a district administrator, site administrator, teacher, classified staff. I'm a parent of a 2-year-old who's not even in Glendora Unified yet. So from my perspective, it was different. But to hear from all of you who have been enduring a lot of these challenges very directly was very eye-opening. And please know that I did hear you, and that everything that I learned will affect all of the decisions that I make on this board and the comments that I make as we continue moving forward. I'm very happy to say goodbye to 2020 and look forward to 21, and very much hope that the pace of progress is accelerated starting January 1st, and that we have a lot to look forward to. Thank you to my fellow board members for helping us all get through this year as best as possible. I'm proud of the work that we did together as a team, and look forward to continuing to do good work with all of you. Thank you.
If I could take my mask off, you'd see a hum. I just would echo all of the comments made tonight. It has been a challenging year. I continue to ask for grace because we still need it. I need it. I agree with Mrs. Ruder. You can't do something like this without making some mistakes along the way. I do have to make a public correction for my board meeting minutes from the last board meeting. I presented a timeline from May until the current time of last November, and I made a mistake in my comments there. I made a mistake saying that RISE came from the previous administration, and that's not the case. But there was a letter based on our receiving of over 300 messages from students asking for help from Glendora High School for some of the issues, social issues that were going on there. And in that letter that came from the district, that did come from the previous administration, stating that we can do better. So I just wanted to make that clarification. I'm also really, really excited about one of our consent items tonight, which is peach jar. And I don't know if it gets lost in translation, but it's an electronic way of sending out all the flyers that you get in your Wednesday folders or whatever day of the week it is, that we're moving towards the electronic. It's one more step this district is taking into the 21st century. So I'm thrilled to see that happening. It's going to help save paper. It's going to help save trees. It's just a really good thing. My thanks again to GEF for their undying labors of love for this district. You just can't thank them enough. I also want to thank whoever took the survey of the neighboring districts and came up with the data that we are pretty much the only place in town that's even completed that waiver. And the districts, I didn't see Azusa on that list, but other than that, other neighboring districts were on there who are not completing out the waiver, have no plans to complete the waiver. I want to congratulate my board members here. And again, thank you, Mrs. Reuter. I echo, I mean, we've texted, we've talked, we've done a lot over the last year, bolstering each other up during times of why am I doing this kind of things, to to saying, I know why I'm here for the kids, and that's why we're all here. So I wanted to give a plug for Zoom for the holidays at the high school. It's visual and performing arts. The tickets are on sale, but I don't know much more about it, and you can go on the high school website if you're interested, but it's a little performance by their visual and performing arts. I've been in education for many years, and I've seen what happens when you say something one day and 20 minutes later, things are totally the opposite of what you think you're going to move forward and tell people and promise people. And boy, I'm telling you, COVID has brought me to my knees, because we can tell you one thing one day, and I've learned to tell people, this is what I know to be true at 10:35 today on Monday night. But by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, things can be totally different again. So again, we ask for grace. We're trying to do what's best for kids here. And it's not always what's best for everyone else, but we try to do what's best for kids. Happy holidays. And I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn at 10:38 p.m.